record. Might as well. I'll cut out whatever's not needed.
Oh,
But
go for it.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, no, it is a so it is a like kind of not an expectation, but just like a cultural norm that anytime you go to someone's house or you go to a party or whatever, you always have to come bearing like some sort of gift or like alcohol or what have you. It was to the point where like when we came to Canada, it was a bit of a culture shock because Canadians are not like when you show up to a house party, you kind of show up with your own stuff and then that's it, and then that's what you're drinking. Whereas like whenever you go to like to hang out with Russians, they'll always like offer plenty. Um, but if you don't bring like something of your own to give, it's it's seen as like a slight. So whenever I would like go and meet up with friends or what have you, or I'd have friends over and they wouldn't bring something, I'm like, man, that's kind of disrespectful. But then I had to remind myself, I'm like, yeah, they didn't grow up with this, so it's not that they're disrespectful, that they're uncaring. It's just that this is not a custom that they're accustomed to. So yeah, no,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
definitely a thing.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point because some people don't know any better, so they can't do any better, right?
Yeah.
However, like, I'm sure you had exceptions to the rule where, like, wow, no one held a gun against your head and you showed up with something that people like. Now it boils down to, like, were they raised that way? Or, like, was this ability or this understanding instilled in them at birth or by culture or by life experience? Some people figure it out either way, but it is fascinating how, like, to return to culture shock, a friend of mine, she's Iranian, and in Iran and Persian custom and culture, like, let's say you and I go out to eat, and if I'm taking you out to eat, you're supposed to offer to pay the check and I'm supposed to decline twice. Because, like, after a second time, then you're just fucking crazy or like begging the question or there's something wrong with this picture. But it's
Hmm.
supposed to be like, all right, I got this. No, 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 no. I insist. No, 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 I insist. Okay. And then, right. And then, so when she came here, I remember, like, let's say someone is like, oh my God, like in Persian culture, it's like, oh my God, that's such a beautiful scarf. Here, you want it? And it's, oh, no, 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 no. But so that's how it is over there. And she said, I stopped that after I had to give away a shirt, a scarf, and a jacket because you can't, like, oh my God, that's such a beautiful jacket. Here, you want it? Okay. Now, like, you can't, now you look like the biggest asshole if you're like, actually, as per the customs of my people, I'm just being polite. And now you're going to hate me. It's fascinating which cultures have those things built into place. I'm sure you've seen the meme where it's like countries where you'll expect to be invited to sit down and eat, and like the Mediterranean is all like, hey, come on down. And in the Scandinavian countries, like, I've seen anecdotal posts on image boards like, yeah, I my family came to Norway, my friend invited me over, and he was like, okay, you have to sit in the living room because we're gonna have lunch. And
Very
in the next
direct.
room over, they're fucking eating. And it's just like, what was he gonna do? Read the fucking TV guide? All right, I'll stop. I'll stop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting with those little differences. I know that like a lot of Middle Eastern cultures, they're very big on opening their doors to people. Like Afghanistan is probably one of the best examples. Like you'll see plenty of footage of like um not even like just like soldiers, but like people just like traveling through the region on like YouTube or what have you, and people that are, like on the side of the road and they have some breakdown with their bike or something, and next thing you know, some dude just comes up to them and he's like, "Here, I got this exact like specific part that you need, and here's like some tea and a loaf of bread." And next thing you know, like 50 minutes later, they're sitting down with the whole family, meeting all three generations, and they're just vibing, which is so strange to think about because like you could tell that they're living in what's essentially a mud hut, and yet like they're opening their doors to someone that they've never seen, never met, that don't even speak the same language, and yet they're willing to offer the shirt off their backs, which is like huge culture shock.
Oh yeah, I mean, first off, On a related note, I remember an episode of No Reservations with Anthony Bourdain, and this was before shit popped off in Syria. But like him and his crew, like their car broke down, and the first guy that came by on a motorcycle stopped, opened up his backpack, and showed up with like bread wrapped up and like dates and like all these like finger food. He was on his way to a party. Okay, and he just shows up with like an armful of water bottles and he's like, please, you're probably hungry, I'm gonna go to the next town over and get that gas. And they were like, did anyone even get that guy's name? Like did it,
Yeah,
but I think it's because that generosity, like, you never know who's gonna knock on your door and you'll never know when it'll be your hour of need. So I think there's that basic understanding, like in that part of the world. Also, to your point about hospitality, um, I forget who, but like some documentary maker was like in a like they were in like Iran, I think, and it was during Ramadan, and like this guy was just like walking around, and he was like drinking from a bottle of water, and the first thing a guy from his doorway said was, "Are you Muslim? Because you're not supposed to be drinking or eating before sundown." And he went, "No," and he went, "Oh, okay. Hey, why are you drinking bum ass basic bitch bottled water? Why don't you have some tea and dates?" And he's like, okay. And like you mentioned, and now he's stuck in this guy's living room, and everyone is like, wow, a genuine Westerner. Hey, rock and roll, Beatles, huh? Look at my record collection. And he's like, they didn't even ask me for my name. Like, now they want pictures with me. And that's fascinating because, the general image depicted of the Middle East are like aloha snack bars that fuck goats and blow themselves up. And there's so much more than that. I'd like to conclude my point by saying a friend of mine from high school is from Afghanistan. And I remember he came over, and the fact that I invited him over, he showed up with like a plate of like lamb and rice and vegetables, and my mom just loved it. Loved, loved, loved it. So whenever his mom would make it, he would always bring a plate over and knock on my door, and he'd call my mom out of respect because, quote, she fed me like a mother. To not call her mom would be a disgrace. And
wow.
to me, I'm like, I've got something in my eye. That's what a sweet, sincere, thoughtful thing to say. And this stood in stark contrast to they hate our freedoms. Uh, they took down the towers because a certain group of dancers who documented the event totally didn't do it, but it was, I don't know, Muslims. That's why we have to invade Iraq. Like, that's what we were given here in the States. And that flew in the face of, yeah, but my friend is the kindest human being I've ever met in my life, and he comes from a corner of the earth where life is not very expensive. Like, and while we're on topic, like you mentioned the fucking mud hut hospitality, isn't it crazy to see like footage of like the Philippines and you see people living in trash shacks and they have cleaner teeth than some of your and my fellow countrymen and they're not fat? What's up with that? They're living in squalor, bathing out of a wash bin in front of their trash hut and they have better teeth and they're in better shape than your neighbors and mine. Fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, and that whole Middle Eastern dynamic with the U.S. and 9/11, that man, I'd grown up like around the various immigrant communities that all my life, and we've never really had like a wave of, I don't know, distrust like that here. I mean, the closest thing I could remember is like Japanese internment, which actually like it doesn't really come up often enough. But yeah, here in Canada, we put them in camps all the same, especially in British Columbia, um, which is like kind of a weird thing we kind of gloss over. Nobody really talks about. Um, but
Same here.
yeah,
I'm sure the Vancouver overlords are go, ha 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 ha, glorious Nippon, not anymore, as they're like rubbing their hands and looking at their real estate investments, allegedly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I saw parts of it like when I went to San Francisco last year. Like they have a lot of a lot of various art pieces and monuments built to like Chinese heritage and whatnot. I mean, obviously, like especially in Chinatown there. Um, and that was a bit of a trip going there, but I'd never really seen like any kind of like specific groupie outed here. I mean, I guess like the closest thing now is like the anti-Indian sentiment that's happening here in Canada, but even then it's not even like it's not it doesn't come from top down obviously because nobody in our government is actually going to, go out on a leg and take that kind of stance. In fact, if anything it's the opposite. Like it's to the point where like the national anthem has been sung in their language like a number of times at hockey games and people booed them
Oof.
which I, I
Oof.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that because like on one hand I understand the identity that they want to build for Canada as this like uh golden mosaic where all cultures are treated with respect, but at the same time it's like, well, I mean, we've imported like the critical mass of these people to the point where like their elected representatives are now they're not running on policies that are localized to Canada. Now they're like saying like a vote for me is essentially like a vote for Gaza or some shit. The UK has also had a couple of these MPs pop up where they're like, yeah, I'm going to defend the interests of your family relatives back home, and it's like, well, that doesn't have a place here. But
Oh, oh.
I I digress. That's a whole other thing we could get into. But I was actually
Oh
curious.
no,
Yeah,
we're gonna get into it.
yeah,
I just wanna say real quickly,
yeah.
you will never hear like a fourth generation Japanese American, probably because they don't exist outside of like a pocket here and there in Washington State or California. Like there are not many Japanese. There's no Japanese American community, really, except like one or two enclaves somewhere on the West Coast.
Mm.
The Japanese internment camps are more or less glossed over entirely. It should be noted that World War II propaganda depicted all Japanese people as buck-toothed or fanged.
Oh
And it
yeah.
was like they got the same treatment the Italians and the Krauts did. In fact, like fucking Salisbury steak was named that because hamburger was too German sounding. In fact, before World War II, German Americans were like one of the biggest ethnic groups in the United States. And, it's look, the point I'm trying to make is this: I guess Germany can be forgiven for you know what because all the real Nazis seem to live in America, if Twitter has taught me anything. That being said, the first post national country, that's a very sterile way of putting what you said, this golden tapestry where all the walks of life are celebrated and cherished, even though there's only one group of people on the planet that have a problem sexually assaulting animals like monitor lizards, and they lack the upper body strength to do it on their own, so that's why they gang rape. I think their gods have multiple arms to show them how to do it solo. No? 700 million Indian men and not one baritone amongst them. There's something very wrong. They're the least threatening race on earth, first of all. Like you don't see Indian dudes in MMA knocking motherfuckers into next week. You know, you don't see Indian dudes in the end because like you'll see the occasional Asian guy, the occasional Latino guy, the occasional white guy, maybe one token Arab who grew up in the hood, so he's got a sick fading three shot. You never see Indian dudes like, oh, Patel rocked him with that dunk. Nope. Maybe in another alternate universe, but not in this one. I think there's one Indian dude in the NHL, the Edmonton Oilers, if I'm not mistaken. They're not. Patrice O'Neill had a bit about you never see Asian men in porn movies, and if BBC headlines have taught me anything, Indians have the smallest dicks on planet Earth. You will never see one. Ever. Even in their own, for fuck's sake, man, even Indian women don't like Indian men. Indian women come to Canada and the US and the UK, and if they're hookers, they make it a point to go like, no Indians, sorry. Like, even when money is on the line, nah. Like, there are ugly truths no one wants to admit about how not all cultures are equal, you know? And I don't know in your neck of the wood if there was like very heavy anti-Muslim sentiment like we had in our country, but at the very least here, there were like, hey, female genital mutilation and an honor killing might be happening in your own hometown, and that's a very real possibility, you know. Um, it should be a cause for concern when it's like, hey, have you ever read this book, the Quran? It's not even in chronological order. Second of all, the stuff later in the book does away with the stuff earlier in the book. So in chapter 2, my name is Muhammad and I want the monies. Guys, a Jew walk by, everyone stand up, be nice to the Jew. Whoa, Muhammad, the totally excellent, perfect, at fault for nothing, totally mega awesome Superman. Why did you do that? Because I love everybody. And then book 5. There will be a time when you will find all the non-believers and sever their heads from their neck, and rocks and trees will go, hark, a party, I see a Jew, and you will and you ask it because the people of the books that in the tax or be subjugated because Islam is intended to rule the earth. So there's, I have questions about the original text this is all based off of. Never mind, married a 6-year-old, consummated the marriage at 9. Never mind that he got his start as an illiterate dirt merchant who became a warlord after his epilepsy was like, oh, my sugar mama tells me God spoke to me. And hold on, I'm actually going to take this one step further because this is a point of contention of mine. If you get in trouble, I'm really sorry, White Pill.
No, no, by
Um,
all means.
Isaiah. Here we go. The first revelation of Muhammad is based off of Isaiah 46, suggesting that this is a more reflection of the way Muslims imagine their prophet's life over a century after his death rather than a historical account. Isaiah 46, the voice said, proclaim, and he said, what shall I proclaim? And of course, an epileptic plagiarist, of course, would look at that and go, and then the archangel, he said, weed. And I'm like, I know weed. Fuck that, man. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And like, see, this is where I draw the line. You could read the Old Testament, and first of all, even on the first page, there's a lot of crazy D&D shit that you could still kind of wrap your mind around. All right,
Hmm.
kicked out of the Garden of Eden. There's a flaming sword in the back entrance that points and thrusts and cuts in all directions to prevent anyone from going through the service entrance. And then angels that were sworn to look over people, they fucked the women and they gave birth to the Nephilim. And then there's this whole civil war and it's fucking crazy. And Lucifer, glorious angel of light, which speaks volumes about the creator depending who you are, is the one who decides to rebel. The most beautiful, charismatic, intelligent, and strongest of all the angels is like, wait, you gave human beings free will? Fuck you, dude. His coup fails, and now he ends up in hell. Which raises more questions. Was hell already there before he showed up? Did he battle someone in a cage match for the keys to hell? I don't know. But like you could still make that leap of logic, okay? And also the fact that the Old Testament lines up with history incredibly neatly, and British historians decided whether when it fit and when it didn't, and that's why there's a 150-year discrepancy in history that is irreconcilable unless it's either all the Old Testament or none of it lines up. Also, the word dinosaur never existed until the Smithsonian was founded, which was around this time this agreed upon series of lies became our history, and no one has done more to distort history and hide the existence of giants than the Smithsonian. All right, now that I'm done, let's just wrap up the whole Quran thing. Trust me, I'm going somewhere with this, White Pill.
Okay.
So, Muhammad goes to heaven on a winged horse with a human head. If the D&D Monster Manual has taught me anything, I think that is a Shedu. Shedu, Shedu. So that's not that crazy. But then he gets to heaven, and Abraham, father of all the faiths of the deserts, is like, whoa, Muhammad, you look like me more than my own children. The language of God. Which, according to all previous religious edicts, what does that mean? Like the Archangel Gabriel said, Mary Magdalene, you are bringing the Messiah. I told this to you in Aramaic and not in Arabic, and God is apparently a monoglot, so you don't have subtitles? Fuck you, bitch. No, religion doesn't work that way. Because, even the greatest of anti-Semites never brings up how, like, what kind of arrogance you got to say you're God's chosen people. Okay, The Muslims take it one step further and say their faith is the one true faith, and their prophet, all other prophets before him, null and void. He's the final prophet. This is the last revelation. All faiths before this, kaput. Also, we're going to give very strict instructions on how to carry this out when you conquer land, and you get the non-believers and their second class citizens, and the true believers, well, I mean, this whole run, convert, or die thing, it's a numbers game. Seriously though, Arabic is the language of God. Stop asking questions. Some people read that and they're like, hell yeah, brother. Some can't, many can't. So all right, if anyone asks, I'm Greek Orthodox, so haha, you thought you had me figured out, didn't you? So yeah, thus concludes the theology portion of our recording.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm
Oh,
no I'm no religion buff, so I'll take your word for it. I've read the Bible, well, skimmed it a couple of times, and I was technically baptized as Christian Orthodox, but I never really leaned into faith. I don't know, it just never really was my calling, and I didn't really have like an infrastructure around. Like I never went to church or did any of those activities. Went a couple times with my family, but nothing like major.
all right. Well, that you know, I don't blame you only because well, you get to claim allegiance to the Russian Orthodox Church, which if right-wing Twitter has taught me anything, it's a based religion to fit their based and red-pilled worldview, much like Catholicism. And I find it fascinating how there are people born into the Orthodox Church and they're never ortho bros. It's always converts. Kind of like in Islam, come to think of it. The fresh converts are always the one with the most to prove. Wow, what a crazy dynamic, huh? So I find it fascinating how you were born and baptized into this faith, but you don't use it in your display name. Like you don't use it as like a talking point. You don't use it as like this is who I claim allegiance to. And I think there's a Siberian-sized divide between converts and people born into it. Some people answer a faith like it's a phone that's ringing and they finally pick it up, you know. But much like meditation, you're supposed to hang up the phone once you get the message. It's not meditation is not supposed to be a lifelong thing, you know? So, that being said, I would like to say that I am not the most religious person on earth, but it wasn't until I encountered gaytheists on Twitter that I sort of rediscovered my faith. Um, I believe I have a lot of strong opinions about everything, and gaytheism is one of them. I will say though, that I won't give you an unsolicited ear beating or anyone listening to this a TED talk about this. All I'm going to say is, uh, historically, gaytheists are always filled with anger directed at the self, guilt, and regret when they're at the end of their life. According to legend, Stalin's daughter said he was going peacefully, sleepy, dying. Goodbye. I die. And then his eyes went wide and he was looking around him like he was in absolute complete shock and disbelief. And yeah, I think he said something like, Heaven's kind of hot. Just kidding. But seriously, no one acts like that when they see the pearly gates. Every single fucking gaytheist of merit with their name in blue on Wikipedia, you look up their final words, and oh boy, that shit is hilarious. My favorite among them, Anton LaVey, who's all like, guys, something is very wrong. Guys, oh. Fucking faggot. Sorry, if that's not allowed on your program, I understand. But, first
Yeah,
of
it's
all,
fine.
Satanism is just Ayn Rand with black candles. Like that's it. It's spoopy
Yeah.
liberalism. You know, the real motherfuckers are like the OTO and like the Temple of Set, and they're the ones doing honest to God. I mean, Michael Aquino, founder of the Temple of Set, is a psychological operations specialist and army ranger that would probably put the finders in motion. So he started a religion, huh? That's where the real deal is. Just the whole fuck you did. You're either a gaytheist or a Satanist. So about Canada White Pill. Hey, about Canada. Sorry.
No,
I
no, it's all
I
good.
you
It's
started
all
talk
good.
you started talking about Canada and I opened up the chapter. of All Dogs Go to Heaven Except Pit Bulls, and there's a whole chapter about Canada here. All right. Um, for anyone listening at home, I've written a book and it's called All Dogs Go to Heaven Except Pit Bulls. You can find it on Amazon. It is volume one of the I Told You So trilogy. So if you don't mind, White Pill, I will yield the floor after saying a couple of quick things about Canada, and I want you to tell me your thoughts on it, hearing about your country from an outsider. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Trailer Park Boys is live action Ed, Ed, and Eddie. Canada is a country filled with people who have spent their lives paying into a system and being told to wait for weeks to see a doctor. The last year, the cheapest rent in Canada was in Newfoundland for $880 to $1,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. Problem is that a lot of the places there have contamination issues with drinking water, worse healthcare waits than Ontario, and it's practically only old people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Canada is not a serious country. Uh, I want the guy at the CBC whose job it is to churn out cultural cliches either sleeps like baby Jesus or is a tormented brain in a jar kept alive by the dark arts. We just need to build more railroads, eh? Put the Indians to work building the tracks, then just run trains all the time. The train apex predator will take care of the rest, said one Indian to another on a breadline. Uh, there is a Newfoundland tradition of mocking public figures when they show up, and we should take note. Indians are soon becoming the gypsies of Canada, where it's okay across the board to be racist, specifically to them and no one else. Uh, no one voted for Justin Trudeau except women, single women, and immigrants. He's never won by a majority vote. There is a rich conservative party and a poor conservative party, and will never form a coalition despite agreeing on most things. Indians don't say sorry. Canada's doomed. Remember that scene in Kindergarten Cop where the kid says, boys have a penis and girls have a vagina? In Canada, playing that in public is a level 6 hate crime. Um, ooh. In Canada, Indian migrants are flooding soup kitchens in Waterloo. The ones in Kitchener have already rejected them, but the ones in Waterloo haven't yet. The funniest part is learning about this from a luchador in sweatpants and a Hawaiian shirt somewhere in Queens. The homeless and turmoil in Vancouver is threatening the Chinese real estate Ponzi scheme because it's actually beginning to affect the prices negatively. So now the drugs coming into Vancouver are laced with bromazolone, which inhibits the effectiveness of aloxone. Tim Hortons endorses human trafficking through their temporary foreign workers program.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada, you can die from leukemia waiting months for chemotherapy, but it's all right because your free healthcare, paid for by your taxes, is used to give some 10-year-old boy breasts and do liposuction on lazy shitheads instead of keeping its citizens alive. What if Canada balanced out all those Indians with Pakistanis? Um, in Canada, beaches no longer allow tents because of all the Indians using them to have privacy while being a living stereotype. Like in Sauble Beach, they don't allow them anymore after kids were digging up shit while trying to build a sandcastle. Life in Canada is worse than the memes. Uh, First Nation reservations in Canada are best known for alcoholism, incest, rape, drugs, more rape, spousal abuse, driving while intoxicated, driving without a license, driving cars that aren't street legal, drugs, prostitution, and rape. And one last one to send us all home. Canada is an introverted country. The US fought for their independence. Canada politely asked for theirs. Burghers shot each other in a civil war. They fought with legislation. People coming to the US were pioneers and the like. People coming to Canada were bums fleeing certain starvation and death, and to a less certain degree, political death. They're also all the loyalists who fled up there when the Revolutionary War happened. For the most part, Canada is just quiet and had their own autistic thing going on, while the loud neighbor to the south drove around drinking, shooting skeets, and banging chicks. Now, everyone is stealing their blocks and shitting in the sandbox. Poor Canada.
Yeah.
Am I correct? I
Yeah.
don't live there, but am I correct?
Yeah, I'd say you nailed it on the head for the most part, yes.
Ah,
Yeah,
yes.
I'd say
Yes.
so, yeah, that's a very astute way of summarizing, a good chunk of Canada and its history, yeah. Yeah, it's, Man, I look, I'm not even a local native here. I came in 2004 with my family when I was like 7 or something. So I have no like generational history here. I have a couple of friends that do that have lived here and they have grandparents that were born here and whatnot. Um, but the story is like all the same, at least in the urban centers. Like, I mean, look, there's a lot of news and whatnot that makes it seem like Toronto and Vancouver and like all these spots like that if it's like this here, then it must like be like this everywhere. Like I guarantee you that it's not. If you go out west, um, just the kind of demeanor that people have is so much more different than urban centers. Obviously, like my brother was living out there at one point when he was training to be a pilot, and
Mm.
I went to visit him one summer, and I was walking outside of his apartment block. I was just going out to the store for something. And this lady, just like middle of the day, like walking by, she's like, "Hey, it's a good day out," and that like it shocked me. And I was like, "Oh, oh yeah, people are like actually nice here, and they actually talk to you. Like this is not, it's not the urban setting of Toronto." So, um, the most of the observations you made there are true. I would say more so for the urban center than anywhere else, but yeah, yeah, man. It's like it's like a house of cards that they've set up like decades or centuries ago, but nobody bothered to maintain it, and everyone's just robbing the graves at this point and trying to
Mm.
suck off or trying to live off of um the goodwill and the reputation that Canada has had, but there's only so much of it to go around. So now that it's just we're hitting levels of reserves that are I mean it's about to get catastrophic. I mean, Hudson Bay company that essentially helped build Canada and was essentially like imagine if Sears was involved in the building of America, like they helped like build the railroads and trade routes and whatnot in America, and they went out of business so that it wasn't just like oh the CEOs like made the wrong gamble or they hired too many people or whatever. Like that's like you're talking about a cultural institution that effectively built the country, and now they're going out of business, and like nobody's talking about it. Like
Oh,
it's just like a story that's come and gone, that they're going bankrupt, and everyone's just like, oh, okay, cool. A company that's existed for 355 years that has been one of the staples of Canadian identity, like Tim Hortons used to be, is just gonna be gone, and like nobody's really doing anything about it or caring. Like I don't know. Like I don't know what's gonna happen. There's only one store now in all of Toronto. There used to be two, or at least two that I know of, and they're just getting bought and sold for pieces, and that's what it feels like. The rest of the country is like it's like the healthcare is unusable. Like you said, you're gonna be waiting in line till you die. There have been plenty of cases, or if you're lucky enough to be a Paralympian who needs a wheelchair lift in her home, you get to call the hotline to help get like a chairlift installed in your house. Hey, you're going to be lucky enough to have the representative on the other line recommend made for you, which is like that actually happened. Like a wheelchair bound athlete. I think she was also a veteran, which just I mean adds even more insult to it. But yeah, the other representative that she spoke with was like, "Hey, have you ever thought of committing suicide?" Like, like what the fuck? I mean,
you
it's not
know,
a
I
serious country.
just real quickly. I don't know what it is. I used to think it was a predominantly American thing, in where our Olympians are treated like celebrities instead of national heroes. Like even during the Soviet Union, and I'd like to believe like there's still something remaining of this where like, hey, did you get a gold medal for the motherland? All right, here's an apartment in Moscow. Now teach the kids how to do what you did. Like, as opposed to like, whoa, you won the biathlon? Now you're on Wheaties. Now you're on TV shows. Like, it's completely different routes. And I forget what this guy's name. There was an Olympic Greco-Roman wrestler from the Soviet Union, and he was just so freakishly strong. He would pick people up off the floor and spin them 180 and like basically throw them on their back to force them into a pin. and he went undefeated for like 20 years, and he got beat by like some fat farm boy from like Wyoming in 2000. Point is, um when he retired from wrestling, they were like, one, you should run for office because everyone in the country knows your name. Two, can you help our country not be fat? Like they found a way to use him for the country, like if that makes sense, you know?
Hmm.
And like this guy had no peer. You know what? I'm gonna give you this guy's name just so I don't sound like a complete fucking idiot. And anyone listening to this goes, "Oh, he's actually right." Hold on. See, first result: Russian wrestler Alexander Karelin, senator of the Russian Federation. Eh? Eh? So, anyways, he also fought in like an MMA match in like the early to mid '90s, and his corner had to keep reminding him, "Don't break him. Just be nice to him. Don't use all your strength." Because like it was like watching a bear play with his food. Like the guy had no he they didn't even teach him how to throw a punch. Just with his Olympic wrestling ability and his freakish strength, like the guy he went up against was like curled up and in tears at the end of the match. Ah, anyways, this Paralympian was a veteran and was told, "Why don't you go suck a tailpipe?" That's kind of heartbreaking, dude. Um, and I'd like to point out that a very strange issue with your country. Let me tell you about your country, even though I come from a country with problems. Like a very strange reoccurring theme with the country is that, like Canadian politeness, it exists, but it is not like so. Like Thailand is land of smiles. That does that just means they're gonna talk shit behind your back with a smile.
Hmm.
And you don't speak the language, so like they'll make nice, but they'll do it while smiling. Canadian politeness is low key passive aggressive, and we're like, you stay in your lane and I stay in mine. I will say though that like to your point, away from big cities, people are people. Like I was born and raised in New York City, so the first time I ever went to the South, it was like, "Morning, lovely day now, isn't it?" And my first thought in my head was like, "What are you trying to sell me?
Yeah.
Like, what do you like? Why are you?" I remember some friends of mine went on a road trip to New England when Chinese lung herpes broke out because they were like, "I don't want to live in no fucking dome. I don't want to live in no fucking FEMA camp. If I ain't ever found out that fucking clam chowder from New England tastes better than fucking clam chowder from not New England." Those were his exact words. So him and some friends went up to New England, and I remember like first place they stopped by, they put in their order. Woman behind the counter immediately went, "You're from New York, aren't you?" And they were like, "How'd you know?" And they said, "You haven't said a word after you ordered." Like and like see like here in New York City, you don't like it's almost customary not to talk to your cab driver. So then when a New Yorker goes anywhere else, they're like, "Why is this guy talking to me?" Um, so to know that you experienced that up there, it is reassuring to know that people are people wherever you go, and the city and the countryside dynamic holds up. The problem, though, in my opinion, is that the politeness comes with part of the identity, because in where like the Canadian Anglo stock that survived World War II and came back home, the boomers were born from them, is that they come from follow orders and you'll get rewarded. This is what brought them back alive after the war. Okay, so then they had kids, and the follow orders, you will be rewarded. This is like the penultimate boomer, because they're still clinging on to the world that doesn't exist anymore. Like, you just gotta give them a firm handshake and look them in the eye, and it's like you're not allowed to walk into a place and ask, "Are you hiring?" That's how they call the cops, Grandpa. You know, one third of your rent, one third of your salary should be your rent. It doesn't work like that, Grandpa. You know, and like the reason Canadians are like that is the remnants of the Anglo stock of following orders and being rewarded. Like you said, they're now just looting the corpses. Once the last boomer is gone, all the all the positive stereotypes about Canadians will be gone. And like it's sad because I don't know what it is that but then again, your country doesn't have a First Amendment. Jordan Peterson kind of proved that. He's like, I'm gonna state the obvious, and everyone was like, no, you're literally Wizard Hitler. This was like 10 years ago before he
Hmm.
became a household name. And all he did was state the obvious. But remember, like that thing I wrote in the book, boys have a penis, girls have a vagina line from Kindergarten Cop. That's a level 6 hate crime up there if you play it in public. Um, there is no First Amendment up there. In fact, isn't there a social justice tribunal in Toronto?
It's not just in Toronto. There's a well, the it's now like codified into I think the human rights laws to the point where like there was a famous case of this transgender worker in BC who was getting misgendered by the boss, and the boss is this like old boomer type. He's like, I'm not playing this fucking pronoun bullshit game. Like, I'm not dealing with that. And if you don't like it, you can go get employed elsewhere. Like, by all means, it's a free market. Nobody's stopping you. And so the transgender person ended up suing the business owner, and I'm pretty sure they won the lawsuit. And yeah, that like that kind of stuff does happen. Um, I haven't really heard of many like other cases, but on the other flip side of it, when it comes to like kids, especially, there was a case that kind of flew under the radar up here. It would really only made waves when Matt Walsh did his "What Is a Woman" documentary, and he interviewed the father of a child up here that wanted to transition and who was clearly getting pressured by the teachers and the mother. It was a divorced family, so the mother was able to kind of split off the kid from the dad in that way, and the dad did not want to go along with the transition, or at the least he said like, look, like wait till you're 18 or 19 and then you can figure it out, but there's no need for you to make this mind altering like decision right now. And so the human rights tribunal got involved, and the father lost custody, and he was also placed under a gag order so that he couldn't even talk to the media or anyone about it, which is
Oof.
fucking insane. And it essentially proved the point that Peterson is making, and saying that yeah, like the government can now go after your kids, so that if your kid is saying that they are of the opposite gender and you're not affirming that, well, that's a slight on their human rights, and so therefore you are liable to lose custody, which is now codified into law, and nobody really talks about. Like we have a conservative party up here and some people that are trying to make waves in the form of opposition, but it doesn't go far enough, because the politeness that we have here, like it's in some ways it is, as you said, like I forget the word that you use, but it's not
Passive
genuine.
aggressive?
Yeah, it's passive aggressive. Yeah, and the other issue is that like the politeness, it's also disarmed a lot of Canadians because we've gotten used to being a high trust society. But then now, especially in urban centers, when we see that trust kind of eroding, and you see a guy fucking smoking on the subway or on the streetcar or whatever, nobody goes to say shit. And then the person that goes to say shit, they get chastised for it. Like I remember there was a clip where um, these Indians, obviously it's a fucking meme at this point. These Indians were robbing an LCBO, which is like our government owned liquor store, which that's some bullshit too. But they were robbing it, and security obviously isn't doing shit, because security up here in Canada is like they don't even carry guns. Obviously, they don't carry guns. We can't even have fucking tasers or even knuckle dusters or anything like that. It's illegal to have any kind of self defense mechanism like that. Um, and so the security isn't doing shit. So the guy's like, "Fuck this! I'm taking it upon myself. Like, why do they get to just rob our neighborhood? Why do they get to rob the store? What the fuck?" So he gets into this tussle, and you can hear the people in the background in the camera saying like, "No, like don't get involved. Why are you doing this?" And it's like, yeah, this is the fucking the Daniel Perry syndrome. This is exactly what happens when you let these people run rampant. This is exactly what happens when everyone is quote unquote too polite. to do anything about it. It just bites you in the ass because there's always going to be an asshole that's willing to take advantage of that. And if there's no social
Now,
contract that is going to um, have some kind of backlash to the people that are offending it, well, those people are just going to keep doing whatever the fuck they want to do. And
now,
if
hang
the
on, hang
yeah,
on. The the syndrome, Daryl. I fucked the name up.
Daniel, I think it's
Sorry,
Daniel Perry.
Daniel Perry. Like, what's that about? Because I don't know if that's similar to or if it's indicative of social loafing, but like TLDR, there was a famous case where a woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered on her doorstep, and like everyone in every building around where it happened saw it and heard her, and no one called the cops. Because like once you reach a certain amount of people in a crowd, everyone sort of diffuses the, well, I mean, someone's gonna call the cops, right? And it turns out no one did. So I'm curious if the Daniel Perry ordeal is similar to that, or I'd like to know more, basically.
Yeah, sorry, it's not Daniel Perry, it's Daniel Penny. This actually happened in New York, so I would be genuinely surprised if you didn't hear about it. He's this like,
Oh, the self defense guy. Yeah,
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 yeah. There
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
and I thought it was hilarious how like he was just a Michael Jackson impersonator, and he was a good man, and he's the bad man, and he was physically and violently threatening people on the train, and
Oh yeah,
someone was like, "Excuse me, I'm going to put myself in harm's way and do something altruistic and selfless. Oops, now I'm Wizard Hitler."
oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
like that was so, and I like how he now became the poster child of, why doesn't anyone do anything? Well, here's what happens. Sorry. I don't, and it's sad because deep down inside, men want to do like heroic things, and they want to be helpful and needful, whether it's like, oh, little old lady needs help crossing the street, little old lady needs something from the top shelf at the supermarket, woman who randomly walks up to you and says, hi, pretend to be my boyfriend, this guy isn't saying no for an answer, and you're like, had a great time hanging out with you last week, babe. I know, right? And then like three Pajeets are standing there like, oh, I guess she was not lying about the boyfriend. you know? Like, right, like men want to step up to the plate, but like because it's instilled within us. It embodies the virtues with which we're best known for. And now that's against the law. And it puts people in a very like it's honestly most men now have to sublimate their desire to like stop a home invasion and take human life by protecting their pets instead of women. Because at least if a man fucking drops you on your head and you have to eat out of a straw for the rest of your life, look, buddy, you fucked with his dachshund. Okay? Like he that reserves the right for him to do things that'll land him in the Hague. And we used to do that for women, not anymore. Um,
Yeah,
but
on no, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
oh, no, no, go for it, go for it. I have just something lined up about that case you said about the child being taken away from the father. Like I wanted to just return to that 1 second, but as you were saying, my bad, dude. Sorry I interrupted you.
No, no, it's all good. I actually I saw a reel the other day. This is like from an old interview, where this man like kind of outlined in so many words like where this weird dynamic between men and women, like why it stands the way it does right now, where like um there's no kind of like, not patriarchy isn't the right word for it, but this idea of like a male guardian, it's kind of diminished, and why there's so many of these incidents, regardless of like Daniel Penny's story, where men either just don't get involved, or when they do, they get in trouble for it. Like I remember there's this other story where a woman was getting mugged on New York subway. It was like 2 a.m. or something, and he stepped in. He had a gun. I don't remember if he discharged it or not, but I remember the woman was being interviewed either the day after or like almost immediately after the incident, and she was like, no, I'm grateful that he saved me. It's just, like, what was the need for the gun? Like, there's no need for that, for anyone to lose their life. And yeah, that speaks for itself. But the guy in the interview that I mentioned earlier, the way that he put it was, he basically said like, look, the arrangement that men and women had before in the old world when raping and pillaging was the word of the day was that men were the protector and that women wanted it that way because they understood that the only thing stopping them from being beheaded or watching their kid get beheaded and then having get raped is another good man. And so that relationship worked out for a very, very, very long time because the world was dangerous and men were necessary to fill that role. Good men were necessary to fill that role. And so when the world didn't become as dangerous and we moved towards modern society, then women started having contemplations regarding their role in the house and the workforce, in society, and so on and so forth, because now they actually had more social mobility than ever. And so men wanting to please women and not deny them of any rights or anything like that, they agreed with it and they went on with it. Except the pendulum swung so far to the point where uh, it's not just that women can do it all, it's that if you're not for the advancement of the cause of women, then therefore you're a bigot. So a lot of men, naturally, in reaction to that, they're like, oh, well, I don't need any of that. I'm just gonna sit here and smoke weed and play video games. Like, if you guys don't need me to step up, then that's fine. I'll just sit back and we'll just relax. Which is like, that's a that's a weak attitude to have, but it's an understandable reaction so that it explains like why the even the idea of an incel has become like a culturally accepted norm. It's a joke now, but like there's not like that didn't happen in a vacuum. That didn't just happen because some men woke up one day and they were mistreated and all of a sudden they decided to just, become shut-ins. Like this is something that's happened over generations and generations. And now we're kind of in this state where at least from what I've seen, like the pendulum seems to be like somewhat swinging back, but it's in a very like artificial way, like through the manosphere and through people like Tate and whatnot. But I still think that that kind of that strategy of like appealing to men is not sustainable. But I think
Mm.
there is like a slow resurgence coming up of like people being like, oh, well, fuck it, like consequences be damned, man. I'm getting involved. Like this is ridiculous. I'm not
Oh,
letting this just happen on my watch. You know.
you know what? You know what? I think you're onto something because this decade is basically eating the fruits that last decade bore.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not even halfway into the decade. And we kind of are almost halfway into the decade. And people are quickly realizing, wow. First of all, I've made it a running theme to always post shit from last decade with the caption, history will not be kind to the 2010s,
Mm-hmm.
because it won't. It was the decade we took every bad idea possible and made it policy and the law. And
Mm-hmm.
as if Tumblr broke containment and came to life. In fact, when Tumblr banned porn, it unleashed the worst of the worst onto the surface web. Like I just all of them, not just the weirdo they them deviants like furries, diaper fetishists, people who think they're other species, like, so it's like a combination of Tumblr coming to life and the Large Hadron Collider getting turned on and the end of the Mayan calendar all happening at once. That was the
Mm-hmm.
2010s. And reminder, the Mayan calendar didn't explicitly say the end of the world. It just meant this is the end of an era. After this, oh, it's mumbo jumbo times. Words mean things? Fuck that, bro. This whole words mean things notion was wrapped up in a Persian rug, beaten with pipes and chains, lit on fire, and thrown off the roof every fucking day of the week, of the month, and of the year. This whole uh language society dictates language, then people decided language dictated society. Remember, boys and girls, the only person you can misgender is yourself. Okay, we spent a decade and a half saying otherwise, and fucking look at where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'd like to double down on this by saying, if you don't mind me quoting my book, it is a truth universally acknowledged that neoteny in women, which is to say, youthful fecundity, is universally desired by single straight men. Feminism erases the femininity of women by measuring them against an inverse male standard. Then things get silly, obtuse, and weird. So to see men and women as equals is part of the reason why we're in this mess, because they're not equal. And then to prop up the notion that they are equal, you have to watch movies where a 90-pound woman can beat up seven men three times her size. And that's supposed to be like, yeah. And that is the least realistic thing I've ever seen since Star Trek. Like, I'm not like phasers and warp 7 and Klingons are a lot easier to believe than like the chick from Twilight taking on 17 tier 1 operators that eat Navy SEALs and shit out their weapons. Really? I'm supposed to believe that? Like, the fairer sex. First of all, the women don't learn women's self-defense to fight other women. Women learn self-defense so they're not beaten, strangled, and stuffed into the trunk of an 85 Camry and pushed into one of the Great Lakes. Okay? So for any one woman to beat a man in one-on-one combat is like you got to flip a coin 90 times and have it land tails 21 times in a row. Those are the odds we're talking about. For a woman to do that against multiple fast-moving opponents three times her size, wake me up when the movie's over. All right. Second of all, uh, I think people intuitively know that there's something wrong with this picture, but to quote Aldous Huxley, all you need is 25% of the public to go along with an idea and everyone else will follow suit. I don't know if you remember, but last decade, well, listen, men number one, all right, we're so good at things, we're also being better at women than women because Caitlyn Jenner won Woman of the Year.
That's
Remember
right.
that? And then remember when like you weren't even allowed to ask questions? You just had to like, this is how it is. Wait, but what is that bigot?
Yeah.
And then like they cut to like what's that cocksucker's name who married the Victoria's Secret model? Johnny Football. What the fuck is his name? Uh um Debo? I don't know. Anyways, fucking Johnny, Chad Thundercock, Johnny Football, NFL guy. Oh no, no, it wasn't him. It was old man cry at the end of every game. Brett Favre. Yeah. So they cut to Brett Favre, and
Yeah,
he's like
yeah, 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 yeah.
weakly clapping his hands,
Yeah.
and everyone was like, "Wow, everything about that guy is ugly, and his soul is dog shit. And we should firebomb his home because he didn't clap."
Yeah,
That's what.
South Park had a bit about that when they were talking about gender, the one you remember the PC principal, the dude with the fucking glasses?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. He leans loudly into the mic. He's like, "What the fuck was that, Favre? What the fuck was that?" Yeah,
Which, by the way, he quickly. I love how at first he started off as like a villain, and now he's kind of like Venom or Magneto. Like your motives are questionable, but you get results, and you ultimately speak the truth, even though it's from a very flawed and damaged perspective. You know. Um, I won't even get into it, but strong woman, yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
strong
yeah,
woman
yeah.
episode was the greatest anything ever in a long time. I would like to say though that very quickly, I just want to circle back to something. There was a stand-up comedian named Guy Earl in Canada last decade, and he did a stand-up routine, and there were two lesbians in the crowd, and he made fun of them, and they fucking sued him, and then they won. All right. Here we go. In a ruling that could carry implications for comedy clubs across Canada, the Supreme Court of British Columbia has upheld the right to bar a patron to receive five figures in damages from a comedian whose performance she alleges gave her post traumatic stress disorder. That's right. If you're gay and you're made fun of by a stand up comedian, you could sue them. Oh, Canada.
Yep.
um, that that case you talked about that like no one ever brings up. Um, okay. I'd like to share something with you and to share something with the ladies and jerks who are listening to this. If White Pill, if I may have the floor for like 2, 3 minutes, okay?
By all means, by all means.
All right, this chapter is called Evolved as One Canadian Father, and I wrote it last year. So excuse the date. And if you're listening to this after the year of our Lord 2025, understand that this was my attempt to bring attention to something no one in my country talks about, and even fewer people talk about where it came from in Canada. It's 2025. Your son goes to public school because it's the only option since homeschooling became illegal in 2024. He's coerced by his teacher into thinking he's actually a girl. He comes home and tells you. You object. The next morning, he tells his teacher that you object. Teacher calls the police and informs them parents of one of her students are trying to prevent them from getting gender affirming care. Next day, you get a knock at the door. Three Mounties and a social worker are standing there. They enter your home and take your son. Your first instinct is to physically intervene, but rationality kicks in.
They could shoot me. Then I'll never see him again. Then my wife will be alone. Then I won't be around to fight for my son.
You think to yourself, a judge has ordered no contact between you and your son until she's satisfied you have proven your understanding that your son is actually your daughter. He's put in an LGBTQ foster home to help with her transition. Free hormone treatments and gender surgeries as they're needed. You post online, appeal to the world as a father. Soon, trans activists have found out about your situation, which goes semi viral. They harass you and your wife in public, send you death threats, vandalize your car, each time you report it to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, but nothing ever comes of it. 1 year goes by, then two, three. You've been before the judge several times, only ever getting the same response. The only connection you've had is seeing Instagram posts of your son gradually becoming a girl. All your savings are gone and you live paycheck to paycheck. The whole ordeal has worn down your wife much more than yourself. She tries to convince you to give in. Just accept that your son is your daughter. She brings up divorce a few times, so, quote, at least she could get back custody herself, end quote. You watch her browsing luggage prices online. You give in. Finally get custody back from the state. Your son is almost unrecognizable. A broken ghost. Joyless husk of his former self in girl's clothing. He's severely depressed from all that happened. He becomes suicidal. 911 calls only end when he's in a hospital psych ward indefinitely. Your son, once your pride and joy in this life, on this earth from which we have all evolved from, this earth where all of its people are downtrodden, downtrodden by all those who stand to prosper from exploitation and suffering, keeps saying he wants to die. The doctors and nurses are more than happy to oblige. You try to put a stop to him pursuing a lethal injection and get arrested because your daughter is considered a mature minor by the government and can get assisted suicide if he wants to. The last glimpse of your son is in the TikTok video posted by the nurse who injected him and dances as the light vanishes from his eyes and he crosses over to whatever is on the other side. So that's just a fictionalized version of what happened. But I'm sorry for saying this, and I don't mean to dislocate my shoulder patting myself on the back, but my friend, sometimes life is too real, so you have to fictionalize it, and people laugh or go, damn, that's a good point. And that's ultimately the basis of my work.
Yeah, yeah. It would be funny if it wasn't real, and it's I mean, first of all, very very well written.
Thank
But
you.
it's
Thank you.
what I was thinking about, like, as you read all that, is like, it's not even the crazy part isn't even that, like, that this is happening. It's the fact that if you point it out, or if you have any disagreement about it, that you're not only the bad person, but you're persona non grata, and that you should face serious fines. It's like you're not allowed to point out the fact that the emperor has no clothes, and then that you're essentially ostracized from greater society if you say or act in any way that is different to it. Like, you get in trouble for pointing out that we live in a clown country, which is it's frustrating to no end. at the peak of COVID, I was looking for ways to get out of this country as soon as possible, and unfortunately, it's not that easy to go stateside, which is my ideal destination. It still is. If I get a job offer or
Mm.
anything, that's the first ticket that I'm taking because this is just it's I don't want to be a doomer and say that there's no coming back for Canada. It's just that I don't know if I'm willing to pay the sacrifice of having half my paycheck go towards programs of this kind of caliber and just I don't know, just feel crushed by the whole process. Like I've had countless nights where my best friend and I will like sit and we'll talk about these issues, then we just find ourselves circling around the well of the same thing over and over and over again. And we have to remind ourselves like, look, it's not good to just to keep peering into the abyss time and time again, but you can't stop because it's around every corner because it's everywhere. My fucking my fucking vet clinic puts up posters on like Pride Month, which makes no sense because when I check people in with their pets, the first thing I ask them is if the pet is male or female. Like pride has nothing to do with anything, especially with your pet's health, and yet they celebrate it. Or like Black History Month, which I think is a fucking retarded holiday to mark. I think it's beyond retarded to have an entire month dedicated to a single race. Of which like most companies they obviously are not going to actually like go out of their way to hire somebody that's like a historical consultant or whatever. Like no, they're just trying to appease their clients. They're just trying to make sure that nobody's going to protest them for not having a fucking George Floyd statue or whatever the fuck. Like this
Oh,
this weird
I
game.
will say though,
Yeah, go ahead, go
that
ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned either a boogeyman or a venerated saint, depending who you are in this country. I find it funny that if you bring up he held a gun against a pregnant woman's stomach and he was a multiple felon, like you're a bad person for saying that. He starred in porn, you're a bad person for saying that. He gave the cashier a fake $20 bill. You're a bad person for saying that. He had fentanyl in his system. You're a bad person for saying that. The toxicology report indicates that there were like more than several substances and he died because of an enlarged heart. You're a bad person for saying that. Like, I can't pretend I know exactly what you're going through, but it's like, what is it if it is not conditioning? Like, what is it if it is not like a
Hmm.
Pavlonian response? I probably fucked up the name, but you're
Yeah,
a smart guy.
Pavlovian.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Yes. So,
yeah.
you know, this kind of attitude, it also bleeds into like, dare I say, pit bull owners. Like, look, I don't mean to make a broad general assumption about people I ain't never met, but like, if someone has a bad idea, they're probably an R strategist. Like, do you know anything about R selection and K selection, like in
Uh,
nature?
I'm sure I understand the concept, but I don't know like specifically what it means.
Oh, okay. So like in the animal kingdom, K selection is like, okay, you mate for life, you have one or two offspring and you nurture them until like adolescence or adulthood. And like while like our selection is rabbits having 1,000 offspring knowing that 700 are going to die in day 3.
Hmm.
Or like turtles having like a zillion eggs on the shore because not every turtle is going to make it to the water.
Hmm.
Like sometimes in nature it's like and not all mammals are like hay selection because like, all right, look, this deer gave birth. All right, if the deer doesn't learn how to walk in the first few days, it's fucking left behind. But like, should it learn to walk within those first few days, it is now a part of the pack forever until death, until it is their turn to give birth to a baby deer, and the cycle repeats all over. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so our our selection and our strategists, they're the kind of people that believe men and women are equal and men can be women and women can be men and no one can aptly define what a woman is, so I guess anyone can be a woman. So they do not believe in the possibility of either controlling or mitigating threats. This is why they can't into pattern recognition or abstract reasoning. It's also why they own pit bulls. It's why they believe in every bad idea that goes against your mind and your soul. Like, even cause and effect is lost on them. Like, I'm sure you've
Hmm.
seen posts where, like, I miscarried because I got the COVID vaccine. Guys, that doesn't mean you shouldn't get vaccinated as well.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sure you saw those.
yeah. There's
Yeah.
a famous case here in Toronto where a lady, like, her, I don't know if it was cerebral palsy or what it was, but literally, like, the day after she got the vaccine, her, like, half her face froze up, and I was, when I saw this go, like, she did like full interviews with the media, like mainstream media. They let her on these platforms, like I think CTV and a couple others, where like she was like, yeah, I got the vaccine and this is what happened, but that doesn't mean that people shouldn't get the vaccine. And when I saw that, I mean, I had no words. I was like, that is an incredible amount of mental gymnastics, which I could understand from like, from her point of view of wanting to shield your, like, your psyche from thinking like I did this to myself, but it's worth it because I see on the media how all these, uh, you know, gurneys and everything is piling up in Italy or what have you, or New York has to bring out the fucking aircraft carrier because there's not enough beds and everyone going on ventilators is dying. Like, I can understand why she would buy into that. I would imagine that's quite traumatic to go through.
Oh
But the
yeah,
fact that they let
because
her on to talk about it and so many people were still parroting her points, I was just like, I didn't have any words for it. I was like, I don't understand how you're not seeing two and two together.
now my work. Okay, just one more time for the motherfuckers in the back. I can't see why you can't put two and two together. Okay, so I'm a lot of my work consists of trying to make sense of the world around me. And I've learned that people, even if English is not their first, listen, this is a very important thing I learned with my work. If what you say has merit, weight, value, substance, or most importantly, truth, even if it is not spelled and written correctly, it will still convey what the message is.
Hmm.
You know, even English, like a Japanese person poorly translating English, if something can still make sense in English, it's unbeatable in its native language, then, right?
Hmm.
Like, the value and the sentiment of what is being expressed is so powerful, it is not even lost to a typo. So that being said, um, I don't know if it's the ego doing everything it can to maintain harmony and take the path of least resistance, but what you described, like our selection, okay? An example of that is like, why can't you put two and two together? Okay, so it's like, wow, white pill. I mean, you have 25 years of dog bite statistics. Here's my precious little sub canine with the flower crown. Checkmate, pattern recognition and abstract reasoning and an endless trail of the dead. My pibble would never do that. And like, that's all they need. That's all they need to take everything you have brought to the table that can be verified within seconds on. It is the similar dynamic, and maybe they are all our strategists, our selection strategists. I don't know, but you see that same kind of reasoning with like addition, people who get the COVID vax, and I hate to say this, but like women who get abortions, they need to get other people to get abortions so they feel better about their life changing experience. And never mind that abortion robs women of the thing that makes them the happiest. And no one ever talks about the stories of women who get an abortion and they're haunted by the death of their unborn following them everywhere they go. And whenever they they're afraid to go to sleep and they have to double down on the Zoloft and on the fucking white wine out of a shitty box because they don't want to have the reoccurring dream, of like some phantom child giggling that they can never make physical contact with, because you cannot make physical contact with the departed in dreams. All right. Like, they never talk about that, but they will try to convince other women to get an abortion. And that is the same dynamic you see with the vaccine. It is the same dynamic you see with transitioning. And it is the same dynamic you see with owning pit bulls. And you need other people to validate your decision for you. Like, just as an example, without the intern, like okay, Brown University did a study where they were like, hey, are you non-binary or trans? Then statistically speaking, most of your friend group is binary and non-binary and trans as well. Like, these ideas cannot exist without other people giving you constant fucking endless support, even
Mhm.
if it goes against common sense, even if it goes against the outside world, even if it goes against every single result you find on a search engine, even if you go to www.imright.com, that still is going to be like, bro, owning a pit bull's retarded. Whoa, you are putting yourself at risk for certain kinds of cancers unbeknownst to mankind until you fucked with your genetics and you're spitting in the face of God and saying he made a mistake because you misgendered yourself. You know, remember, the only person you can misgender is yourself, because preferred pronouns are a way of saying call me something I'm not. I'm tired of pretending. I've made up my mind, and I'm done playing pretend. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but like, to circle back to your point, why can you not put two and two together? Like, I hope to shed light on this, and this is part of my work. And just one last note, if I could just so anyone listening to this doesn't think I'm a fucking crazy person you dragged off the street. Um, All Dogs Go to Heaven Except Pit Bulls is volume one of the I Told You So trilogy. Volume two is done. It's in the hands of my editor. It's going to be called It's All One Thing. You see, in the first book, come for the grievances laid bare at the feet of something I have made up my mind on. Pit bulls. Stay for the writing with no peer or equal or equivalent. And in book two, I lay bare my grievances about this whole trans or nonsense. I don't know what to call it, because, I don't hate the individual. Everything else, it could go to hell, and it is abject evil in human form. It is the same way bad art concepts can propagate themselves in any medium. Well, it's kind of like social contagion. I have no other way to put it.
Mhm.
If you shut off the internet and people didn't have access to porn, hardly anyone would transition ever. Include me in the screen cap. Just without the invasive and pervasive nature of pornography, transitioning is less likely to happen. Also, just one last thing, and I will yield the floor because I know I'm holding you hostage with this TED talk.
No, no, by
And
all
thank you,
means.
and thank you for this. People who transition kind of remind me of like people who okay, like the immigration argument and the abortion argument reminds me of the trans argument. Just hear me out. So people who argue in favor of immigrants, they will fight to the death of the rights of people they've never met from countries they've never been to. Things like, who's going to feed them? Where are we going to clothe them? Shouldn't they see a doctor? Where are they going to live? Do they have any skills they can bring to the country they're moving to? None of that shit's answered, because as soon as those immigrants arrive, the activist must move on to the next wave of immigrants, because all they have is stage one thinking. Kind of like, let's say, like the pro-life people. Unfortunately, there are women who get raped or get fucked by a family member and they got to abort the baby. But for every one of these are 9,496 women who are like, I need gummies. That's it. Remember, anytime someone gets knocked up or an STD, it takes two hands to clap. Okay? Like, it doesn't, oh, I need hot foaming beef injections and I need to feel like a big person by snuffing out life in my womb. Like, so many of these problems can be solved with condoms, but I don't feel anything. Well, enjoy playing Russian roulette with your life and your body. And never mind that hormonal birth control is a sales funnel to SSRIs. Hormonal birth control does nothing against STDs or HIV. Nothing. Nothing. But those disgusting, fetid, thoughtless cunts have the nerve to invoke victims of rape and incest to justify getting fucked by strangers raw. Okay? So You got an abortion. Great. You didn't get an abortion? Now we see the pro immigration dynamic. Oh, life is sacred. Okay, where's this kid gonna live? Kids who get pushed through the foster home cycle, they're open to abuse without equal. And older kids are often shuffled through the system because everyone wants to adopt the precious baby from overseas. Wow. I come from money. Of course I'm gonna adopt the fucking Asian kid because it's the ultimate status symbol here in Long Island. You know? Ooh, I'm a bleeding heart. I'm a farty old liberal who makes enough money from residual income and whatever this nest egg I have that I put into place before I retired, so I could cut checks to Dartmouth College. And I adopted someone from sub-Saharan Africa to show that I'm a good person. You know, here's the problem though. Let's say you keep the child. Where's the child going to live? You're going to put that child up for adoption? If you do, you have no soul because like you're basically leaving the child in the jaws of defeat and it has to fight its way out to get and victory for that child is normalcy. Even though victory for most people with a normal life is a better life. It's like how an alcoholic wakes up shaking and has to drink to get to normal. He's not even enjoying it at that point, you know? Like a junkie who's got to shoot up or snort or smoke it so they don't shit themselves. So, there's never any discussion as to like who's going to take care of the child, how is the child going to be cared for medically, who's going to feed the child, who's going to clothe the child. But once that child enters the world, the pro-life activist marches on to the next terrified, pregnant woman not knowing what the fuck to do with her life. And we see that same dynamic with trans people. They're mollycoddled every step of the way. It's not transphobia. Everyone around you and your family and your social circle and every single voice of dissent except the 30 gooners on Discord and your 5 friends on Twitter, we're correct and they're wrong. And they're given preferential treatment and they're held by the hand every step of the way to be given body destroying hormones that nuke their endocrine system worse than any hormonal birth control ever conceived in any fucking lab under the sun or in a fucking secret bunker. Not even Area 51 can come up with shit that hurts you more than puberty blockers. All right. And then and then you decide to take the ultimate step and be a true Franken person and get bottom surgery. And then guess what? You get bottom surgery, you're thrown overboard. There are no resources for you. You have to dilate that stink ditch hatchet wound every fucking day so it doesn't close up like wounds are supposed to. Okay? Like you are now spitting in the face of God and saying he made a mistake because you misgendered yourself first and foremost and you went so far into it, you are now past a point of no return. You could have been just a man with tits, but no, you needed to have some sort of fucking like inverse horseshoe crab gaping void of insanity between your legs. And there are no resources for people who get bottom surgery. Oh, are you a woman that got brainwashed into thinking you're a man? Whoa, dude, now your name is Adrian and you're 5'4" and you have a Millhouse from The Simpsons middle school dirt stash. And, like, hey guys, my name is Adrian and I'm the manliest man in the history of mankind ever since Prometheus came down from Mount Dudeville to teach us all compound lifts. Look at my beer can golem dick made of grafted thigh and forearm meat. I'm totally a man. Right, but now they pissed out of a hole in their pelvis and their vagina don't work no more. And when they go to sleep, they have dreams of their past life because your psyche will never lie to you. Neither will your intuition. Imagine all the people who transitioned and like I I'm a woman because it says so on my ID. Remember, we're back to the R strategist thinking, remember? Just because I have a wig and a bag and my ID says female, I'm a woman. Even though every cell in my body cannot be reverted and there's testosterone pumping through my veins and all the XY chromosomes are still there, I'm a woman. When they dream about being the sex they were born as. No one who transitions ever tells you this. And I can't tell what's more nightmarish. Your dreams telling you what you put off and keep away at all costs, or once you finally get the last step and you get bottom surgery, you're pretty much a persona non grata now. Like the trans community isn't really keen on letting people know about stink ditch hatchet wounds or beer can golem dicks made of thigh and forearm meat, because no, if you saw that upon first sight, you would reject it entirely. But you're already this far in. You know, all right. I'm sure I come off like a ugly and spiteful and hateful mutant because I am. I'm kidding. No, 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 no. Um, I'm. You know what? The introduction to the second book is as follows. Someone smarter should have said or written this by now, but here we are. Bro,
Yeah,
I'm not the
yeah,
smartest guy in the room. I don't have access to secret, hidden, or arcane knowledge. I know I'm pretty good at paying attention, and I know I'm good at expressing myself, regardless of medium. I think the biggest tragedy is that people have to hear this from me. There are a lot of smart people out there who could have put this into better words, but sometimes you must make the anvil hot by striking it, and that's basically the crux of my work.
yeah. No, a lot of the discourse around it, or at least like the people that are in support of it, it comes off as very transparent, like they're using the emotional and cultural capital of this issue to place themselves in the position that, like, oh, I care because I have these opinions. And then when it comes to like somebody that's actually in power of pushing forward laws or changing culture on it, and you see them kind of adopt that view, I just like look, I have a hard time thinking that like this issue is really that big on their radar, or even like worth the energy that people are putting into it. Like we never even, the only exposure that we had to like trannies or anything like that 10 years ago was like, I don't know, maybe like a scene in a comedy movie where a guy's making out with a girl in the bar and then his buddies make fun of him because it turns out it was a dude. And then that was it. Or like the fucking, that one song by Usher. Um I forget the lyric, but it was something about like looking for like an Adam's apple or something. Um yeah, but like dancing in a club and making sure she doesn't have an Adam's apple or whatever the fuck. Like
By
it
the
was
way,
kind of
that
yeah, yeah.
that scenario you described, where like there's a girl at the bar and your friends are like, "Whoa, it's a dude." That was a beeper commercial from '91 or '92. Like
I
that,
believe it.
like it was such a punchline. They used it for a pager commercial.
I believe it.
Because that's hold on, because I don't want the people listening to this think like you owe me a fucking favor and you're like, I'm just gonna let the crazy guy talk about fucking whatever. No, no. You could verify and source anything that comes out of my mouth or anything I write. Pay hold on. Pager commercial tranny. Here we go, Smart Beep commercial. Oh, it was a 1999 ad. Never mind. But there you go. I'm still right. Um, it's strange because, um, like, I'm not against the individual. I am against lying to people. I'm against being forced to participate in a lie against my will, and I'm against people exploiting and exacerbating the mental anguish of troubled people to make vast amounts of money. That is what I'm against. That is the source of my anger and distrust and disgust of it all. Because, like, it doesn't, like you said, why can't you put two and two together? And listen to me, man, and this goes for everyone. Everyone. If you believe in the lie that men can be women and women can be men, you will accept any and every other lie. It is a foundational lie. It is like, because, look, um, transitioning is dress rehearsal for suicide. I don't know what to fucking tell you, man. I have a chapter on this in the next book, and I'll spare you the ear beating of reading it all. But like, you're a smart guy, White Pill, and I'm not saying that just to blow smoke up your ass or put baby powder on my hand and pat your bottom and say there is no former Soviet bottom like yours. Okay, but that being said, um, all right. Consider the following. Blacks, when slavery was legal in my country, did not take their own lives at the same rate as trans people. Jews in concentration camps, from Auschwitz to Dachau and everywhere in between, did not take their own lives at the rate of trans people. Like, no other group in history has ever taken their own lives at the rate of trans people. So clearly, something is very fucking wrong with this picture. No species on planet Earth has a suicide plan laid out unless they are confronted with something that they cannot reconcile. A friend of mine, he went to the Dominican. No, was it the Dominican Republic? No, he went to some fucking country, and like a scorpion got trapped in the sink of his bathroom. Okay, and the scorpion kept trying to claw its way out from the sink and kept, it couldn't make it. So the scorpion stopped for a second, laid on its side, and stung itself in the torso and died. So the scorpion was faced with something, it was faced with a hurdle it could not, like, overcome. And, like, the only logical conclusion was, all right, it's over. So imagine doing the thing that affirms your true self and then deciding it's over. There's something very wrong with that picture, dude. Like, there are only so many ways you can relentlessly state the obvious without repeating yourself. And you know what? If transitioning is not dress rehearsal for suicide, I yield the floor to anyone who could better explain it than me. Because I've made up my mind, and this is the only way I can make sense out of an endless pattern I have been told to not look at.
Yeah, the rate is like 40%. It's basically a coin flip, and it's regardless of whether or not they have the surgery or not. And I don't know. I think like part of it, like the fervent energy behind a lot of people's support for it, it it comes down to something that Jordan Peterson said about the convoy. Actually, he was like, well, it was strange to see so many people buy into the lie that all of a sudden all these Nazis and hateful people descended on the nation's capital. It's just like, how can you believe that your fellow man and your fellow Canadian is capable of such a thing? And the way that he phrased it is something along the lines of like, well, look, there was there was basically two beliefs that people could take up in that moment. It's either A, those people are actually racist, sexist, homophobes that are anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers, and they want to kill grandma, which was the predominant lie and the line that was pushed across all media channels and actively suppressed on social media if you went against it. So there's that. Or you are of the mind that your government is tyrannical, that it does not represent the will of the people, that no party is able to navigate COVID in a way that is not restrictive of personal rights and freedoms. And so
Hmm.
of the two paths that you could take, the first path is a lot easier to take because number one, you have the idea of social cohesion that the majority of people are going along with it. The news media is parroting these talking points, and you have thousands of quote unquote experts that are also supporting your opinions versus aligning yourself with people that are on the fringe. So people that are on YouTube, people that are pushing their own Substacks, people that are talking in hushed tones in bars or, uh, parks and whatnot. People that are not, they don't have the same kind of quote unquote like moral weight to sling around, or reputational weight to sling around because they're not in positions of power. But that doesn't mean that what they're saying is any more or less right. You kind of have to take the argument for what it is on its own merits and do your own evaluation. But that's a lot harder to do. It's a lot harder to do, and there's a much steeper price to pay if you go that route. So it's a lot easier to kind of shield yourself and think, no, everything is actually okay, and the government knows what it's doing. And I think that that's exactly with like whether it's third wave feminism or the trans thing or Black Lives Matter, is that it's easier to fall into these social mores where like there's a hint of truth to them. Like for Black Lives Matter, it's like slavery was bad. Yeah, no fucking shit. Anybody can fucking tell you that. even though we have more slaves now than we've ever had in human history, which is actually a fact.
Fact,
Um,
fact. Yeah.
and so that's for BLM. For the feminist stuff, it's like, oh well, remember the patriarchy? It's like, yeah, I also remember when the majority, if not all, of the people that would go to fight the wars and to defend women were also men, and the fact that the majority of professions that actually build the infrastructure that we all enjoy is over dominated by men. But that's a harder stance to take if you go against that. So like with
Mm.
every single one of these like social issues, there's there's some kind of like there's a line of belief that you can take that has a not only a socially acceptable stance to take, but there's like a level of like psychic shielding that it affords you because you're quote unquote on the
Ooh,
side of like the good
I gotta write that
guys.
down. Like, keep going, but
Yeah.
psychic shielding, I learned today. Yes.
Yeah. That's what it well
No,
that's what
deadass.
yeah, that's what it feels like. And especially like one of the more prominent examples here in Canada was the fact that like we had all that whole hubbub about residential schools like 2 or 3 summers ago, which for those that don't know, Canada and I don't know to what extent America did this too, but Canada played a huge role in taking kids from reservations, from Indian reservations, and forcing them to go to these schools, which is an atrocious thing to do. And their whole plan was to essentially civilize the brute and force them into jobs of subservience. So they instructed the kids in a way that would have them fill various service level jobs when they would get out of these schools. So,
Mm.
waiters, garbage handlers,
Have you
like all that.
you
Yeah.
ever seen the TV show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
I've seen scenes from it. I haven't seen the entirety of
Okay.
it.
So basically the engines were gonna do all the Charlie work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay.
Basically.
That's
Yeah.
which is incredibly horrific to consider that it was a multi-stepped streamlined thing. And if memory serves me correctly, they were like, "Oh my god, there were like a million dead babies in the foundation of every one of these schools." And like churches got fucking set on fire because reasons, and then they excavated the fucking foundations of the school and found nothing. Am I correct?
That's basically it. And they actually have not excavated a single body, which is actually even worse. So, what ended up
Hey.
happening is the whole thing, in my opinion, was just a massive insult to not only Canadians but more importantly to the natives because like they don't get talked about enough in our media, and they only really get mentioned when there's some kind of a crisis with water cleanliness or land
Yeah.
rights and whatnot. But those
Or,
people are
someone's
yeah
talking about his hot Matisse girlfriend. That's the only time you ever hear about the engines. All right, I'll
yeah
stop. I'll stop.
no
I
no no
wanted
no
to
that's
drink
fine,
to say that.
that's fine. But yeah, the whole thing was just a slap in the face to everyone because first of like they use this like I don't know I don't think it was lidar but some kind of ground scanning technology to find all these burial plots or what they thought were burial plots. Some people have said that I've heard that like records have come out and they said that it was actually they dug up the ground like decades ago to expand their sewage system, which is if that is actually true, then what a fucking joke that is. But so they found these scans, and there were a couple hundred of them that they found in this one church. So then they started doing all these different scans across the nation, and they were like, "Oh my god, all these scans are popping up. These must be the bodies of the kids that were killed on the property." Which, like, if you just think about that, like, just logistically, like, what that would mean, and I realize that this has like like Holocaust denier undertones, but bear with me here. Like to facilitate a system like that where you're committing essentially like lighthearted, not lighthearted, but like genocide on the lighter side, where you're not killing thousands but just hundreds. To orchestrate something like that and to be able to hide it for decades, when the last residential school, like I think it was like it wasn't until the 90s that they were officially closed. I'm pretty sure. Um, so for one, like hiding something like that would be an incredible feat. I don't know how anyone from the church or otherwise would be able to hide such a fact for decades. That would really take some kind of a special character. That's like some fucking Area 51 type shit that you'd take to your grave. But in any case, when these scans were found, obviously our prime minister did what he always does is he comes out, he makes this great big speech how colonialism was this amazing, awful, and uniquely evil thing that happened to Canada and elsewhere, and that we have to atone for these sins, and we have to do right by these communities. But their version of that, of what it meant to do right, was they invited the Pope on an apology tour, which, in my opinion, was about the most retarded thing you could do, because all it did was it just highlighted the troubles of that community for like a week and a half, and then the Pope left, obviously, because he wasn't staying. They weren't going to build a fucking new Vatican here. So once he left, and all those people had to go back to their reservations where their access to drinking water is shite. They're paying $20 for a fucking box of craft dinner because getting any food or resources up there is nearly impossible. Um, Alcoholism, drug addiction, you name it. Like, there's still plenty of reservations that are dealing with those types of issues. And yet, the government solution was to go on an apology tour. And then, once the churches started burning, Trudeau didn't say anything until like the 20th or so church got burned. And his response was, I understand the sentiment of the people that are doing this, which is a fucking beyond wild thing to say. But the biggest slap in the face in the whole thing was the fact that they created a new holiday. Not a holiday, but like a government day. Well, I guess it would be a holiday. Um, it's called Day of Reconciliation, and it's somewhere in June or July, somewhere in the summer months. But they created this holiday, and it was the first time ever that a holiday of such history was ever made. And on the first year that the holiday became a thing officially in the calendar, Justin Trudeau was vacationing with his family on a beach somewhere in like British Columbia or some shit. And at first you think, okay, well, the man's got a pretty stacked calendar. Maybe, it's just the first year, and some things got swapped or whatever. Like, let's give him some grace. But then you think about it the other way, you're like, okay, hold on. This is the leader of the nation who does not like there's no way that he goes to sleep not knowing what's going to happen on the next day. He has a whole team of staffers around him. He's also the one that's been pushing for this holiday all this time. So the only other conclusion that we can come to is that he instituted this holiday, created all this like just mass media frenzy around this, I mean, nothing burger of a story. Uh, and then, in order to placate the masses, when he created this holiday, he decided to spend it with his family instead of like he was invited to go to like all these different reservations and to hold talks and like hold speeches and all that. Which, as a prime minister, like you would think that that's a more appropriate thing to do. It's like if they made a 9/11 fucking reconciliation day and the president was, I don't know, fucking out in Tahiti somewhere sipping on Mai Tais or eating vanilla ice cream or whatever the fuck, like just completely abdicating their duty to the people. It was just like when I saw that, it was just the absolute most one of the more like disrespectful things that I think was ever done by a prime minister to date, which is a pretty fucking tall order. Um, because the history of Canada's prime ministers is littered with plenty of people that were whoremongers and adulterers and whatnot. But in any case, that whole thing with the kids, it was so badly handled that now there have been lawmakers that have been pushing for essentially like gag laws on people that in any way speak out against this issue. Like if anybody says in the media publicly right now that, hey, by the way, no, not a single body has been dug up, they're deemed persona non grata. In fact, the Conservative Party in British Columbia has just kicked out 3 people from its from within its party because one of their MPs went on a podcast and was talking about the fact that, like, hey, by the way, it's great that they had these investigations that the Pope came for an apology, but how come we haven't seen like a single actual like physical shred of evidence of like a child's skull or something? Like, I'm not asking for you to dig up every single grave, but if you're going to make this assertion that there's thousands of these bodies lying across Canada, and as a result, we have to have this cultural reckoning moment where like so many people have forgotten the amount of statues that were torn down, the amount of streets and highways that had their names changed to like this native fucking, whatever the fucking language. I don't mean to be disrespectful to them, but it's just there's so much about the Canadian identity that shifted in that moment that was so fake and so just not genuine in any way, shape, or form. It made me feel disgusted that not only was like this topic of residential schools brought back up, but it was done in such a way that it was a disservice to everyone. Because the white libs got away with coming up on the podium and saying, "We care. We care so much. We care for each and every one of these children." And they were doing it on the back of people that went through nothing short of hell, and they got away with it. And if you were to point it out, you were the bad person. You're Hitler. I there's so many stories like that in throughout the last 10 years, um, that when you just keep breaking them apart like layer by layer, you can't help but black pill on where Canada is headed and what's going on, because like it is a joke, like it's an absolute fucking joke of a country at this point, which makes me really sad because like I don't want to leave. I have family here. I got all my friends here. I got all my whole life here. I went to university here. I've put so much effort into like just trying to be a decent person, and yet it's as if like there's so all these forces within like greater society that are just like telling me like, nope, we actually don't want your input. We're good. We don't need any straight white males. Like I don't know. It's
What
insane.
what's heartbreaking is that, like, what you just first of all, the land acknowledgement that
Oh god.
happens in New Zealand and Australia is along the same lines in terms of like, first of all, I just want to point out that America did horrific fucking things to the Indians, okay? And I used to joke that the Soviet Union was revenge on America for what they did to the Indians. Um, because what they did was what ooh, it was so bad Iron Maiden even made a fucking song about it called Run to the Hills. All right. Also the song Indians by Anthrax on the album The Persistence of Time is like one of the saddest things in the world, because like Joey Belladonna is of Native American heritage, and this was him trying his hardest to go, I don't represent my people, but I am a part of them, and like I have a problem with what happened to them.
Hmm.
So, as horrible as that is, can America gets the bronze medal. Canada gets the silver medal in shitting on the Indians. Like they were wiped out to like 1% of their former population. And like I mentioned earlier, their reservations are fucking nightmare.
Oh yeah.
The gold medal of course goes to Australia. What I don't oof I don't there's I hate to say this, but there is no group of people unable to fend themselves more than the Australian Aboriginals. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but some stray a cunt would do things like get a box of wine and like leave a switchblade right next to it, like in the middle of a parking lot, and hours later there would be a report on the news like, we're here at an Adelaide parking lot where, a couple of people got over a fight over a box of wine. Here's Scott, on the scene. Thanks, Sheila, blah, 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 blah. And like hours, mere hours after doing this. So, also, Dravidians and Australian Aboriginals are cut from the same Franken genome, and I will not elaborate. Um,
Mhm.
but just real quickly, what the media hype that prevents any dissent. What you described reminded me of, like, you ever seen the movie Falling Down?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Great movie. I love
So,
that movie.
re-
Fantastic movie.
remember William Foster defense at the end? He was like, "Wait, I'm the bad guy." It's like
Yeah.
I paid into your system, I did all this, and I did what I was told was right, and like I'm the bad guy. So, I think it's important to note that like the media overload sort of prevents meaningful discourse. Like I'll give you an example. Remember in 2021 when Black Lives Matter looted the Pride Parade?
They looted the
Oh
Pride
no,
Parade?
oh no, it was 2020. No, because it was like it went from Pride Parade to Black Trans Lives Matter, as if like that was first of all, Black Trans Lives Matter is weird because most trans first of all, like most black crime is black on black crime, which again, in the face of Black Lives Matter, you're a bad person for saying it. Slavery has existed since the dawn of time, but African Americans have a hang up about it because slavery is the beginning of their it's a part of their ethnogenesis.
Yeah.
Like it is forever, to the degree of which they want it, it is forever something they could summon or this is all right. Let's just put a pin on this for a second. There's an old SNL sketch where Horatio Sands plays a guy at a party and he just keeps doing horrible things, but he follows it up all the time with "a bear ate my parents." And it's like, whoa, he's like pissing into the house plant. That's insane. Oh, dude, lay off of him. A bear ate his parents. Whoa, he threw the sofa through
Mm,
the
mhm,
patio
mhm.
window. What's going on? A bear ate my parents. Whoa, White Pill, why are you so insensitive? Remember when I told you a bear ate his parents? I guess you need to hear it from the horse's mouth. Like, and it just and it keeps and the behavior just keeps getting worse and worse. And then the punchline is like a bear shows up and he's like, "Hey, am I late for the party?" And upon upon seeing him, Horatio Sands throws himself through the window he broke to escape the bear. Um, but anyways, it's a very tricky thing to unpack because like one, most black on black crime, most black crime is black on black crime. Like you're like a white guy is just as likely to get smoked by a cop as a Chinese guy or a Pakistani guy or a Russian guy. Like because like they don't listen, they want to get a paid vacation and sometimes they got to do it by claiming a life. All right? Ugh, I don't want to deal with the animals. I just want to do paperwork. Oops, I mistook my gun for my taser
Yeah, it helps if you're a female cop.
again. Yeah. Oh, female cops give "I got your back" a whole new meaning. Okay. Okay. Um, hmm. So when you say Black Trans Lives Matter, first of all, that still falls under black on black crime. The phrase "Black Trans Lives Matter" it's it as if like there's a plantation owner with a breech rifle or maybe like a Remington shotgun with Winchester bullets, the old school ball bullets that you got to dig out before you die of infection, not like a caliber or buckshot. So Black Trans Lives Matter makes it sound like there's a bunch of men pretending to be women who have disfigured their bodies and women pretending to be men who have also disfigured their bodies, and they're like running across a plantation, and Big Daddy, the field overseer in his white seersucker suit, who's sipping on a mint julep as his mulatto love child stands to his left going, "Papa, what dost thou doing?" "Shut up, half slave son. You had a proper education, unlike these slaves." And he's picking them off one by one with his antique, genuine Southern dandy firearm. And that's what comes to mind when you say Black Trans Lives Matter. What does not come to mind is like black trans men and women dying at the hands of people with the same skin color as them. Because that would be wrong. Because, you, first of all, again, to circle back to your earlier point, White Pill, why can't you put two and two together? Okay. Number two, um, maybe all these people can be summed up as our strategists. I don't know. But like, it's heartbreaking to see things that are framed for what they're not every step of the way. And ultimately, because it's Black Lives Matter. Oh, well, I mean, if you buy into the lie that men can be women and women can be men, everything else is easy and fair play and part and parcel. So, like, I hope people who listen to this can take something away from this because um ever since last decade, none of it has made sense to me. And there are people who kind of like with the vaccine, the COVID vax, like you are very likely to lose your job and your well-being and put you and your loved ones in harm's way for saying two and two is four.
Yep.
Like I never thought, which yeah, I understand smarter people or anyone with a bigger platform can be like, you're just stating the obvious. And it's like, be that as it may, do you have it in writing? And does your work exist outside the ghetto you preach to and fleece and demoralize? The answer is no. So, I just want to say one thing though, White Pill, if you don't mind.
Hmm.
Because I've said a million things already. Let me say a million and one. Um, it's not all doom and gloom because I would like to say that, first of all, don't plug into culture war because you're just vicariously living through someone else. Um, Ted Kaczynski wrote about the power process and how we participate and engage in it. Well, culture war is a great substitute for the power process. Okay. And if you make realistic claims or offer realistic solutions, that does not do good for your brand. Okay. So, are things bad? Most definitely. That's part of the price of saying 2 plus 2 equals 4. But I ask you, isn't it strange that all these guys, regardless if they take think tank money or not, regardless if they have ties to the fucking military industrial complex, regardless if they're kissing the ass of Eric Prince, the CEO and co founder of the world's largest private army, Blackwater, never mind that these people are often 1 degree separated from the GOP or the armed services, all right? Never mind that these people engage in all the bad behavior they claim to hate in leftists. Never mind that the married men and the family men amongst these people get a free pass to bitch and gossip and lie and misrepresent others that ruin their fucking song and dance. Never mind that all of culture war is based around stage one thinking, you know? At least the losers on the left occasionally log off and end up in positions of power. If not even for tranny mods that help subvert online scenes and subcultures, those are tangible results you could point to. Right wing culture war, what does it consist of? LOL, black people, notice and move on, bad thing is bad, just give up, subscribe to my Substack. That's it. None of these disgusting cocksuckers ever say things like, keep your block clean, get to know your neighbors. Amongst all those dopey assholes with the orthodox cross or a cross in their display name, they never tell the religious amongst them to volunteer at church. They never tell you to focus on what you can change. They never tell you that local politics has a greater effect on your day-to-day life than 39 out of 40 headlines every day and every week. Realistically speaking, anyone who runs for the presidency promises a lot and never follows through on it. Like, take Trump. Did we get the wall? No. Was the swamp drained? No. Was Hillary thrown in jail? No. Did the deportations happen? No. He told everyone to take the COVID vax, though. The reason you vote for whoever is president of the United States of America is because they get to pick Supreme Court nominees. That's it. That is the biggest reason you should ever vote for the president of the United States if you're an American citizen. Otherwise, your congressman, your senator, oh, they are the gateway between you and the reins of power and the levers of power and the purse strings of your state and your city. Whoever sits at your town hall, whoever sits in your city hall, whoever sits on the school board, they get to bang the gavel and tell you to shut up when you say 2 plus 2 equals 4. Like, for the life of me, I will never understand why these abundantly obvious truths are never said or uttered out loud by people who have a platform. So, because I have exhausted all of my options online and you can only rephrase the obvious so many times, I put it in a book. And, I think it's really sad that there's some schlub in Queens, New York, who wears sweatpants and a Hawaiian shirt and wears a luchador mask. And his work stands on their own. Why do they struggle to exist outside their sphere? What can one man do? I co founded a zine that has international distribution. I wrote a book. I set up a website to sell the art that I put up on flyers and stencils all around my city. Because after the 17th person asked me, yo, how much for that on a hoodie? I realized I could be making money off of something I have strong opinions and feelings for. Okay. What can one man do? A lot, really. And you will never hear those options offered or provided by people whose job is to take your time and your money and your energy and your soul, and most importantly, your attention. Like I will, for the life of me, I will never understand this, because if these problems had simple solutions, it would not, there would be no need to talk about it. So, you know, just for anyone listening at home, what White Pill and I are discussing is very real. These are very real problems that get worse with each passing day. And there are very meaningful, practical solutions you could enact in your personal life to improve the quality of your life. Because after all, if you better your surroundings, you better yourself. Where else to start than by keeping your block clean and getting to know your neighbors? Like you said, the difference between city and countryside life. I'm born and raised in New York City, bro. Some people born and raised here, they avert eye contact with their fucking neighbor when they go to check the mail. People aren't supposed to live like that. And just because you get used to something doesn't mean it's healthy. Just look at crackheads or vegetarians. All right. It's not until you gain some perspective outside your local, um, like whatever cultural conditioning you are unfortunately exposed to, because we all are. Okay. But with a little bit of life experience, you learn that there are constants all around us. And sometimes they are made up of the obvious. And the abundantly obvious is if you improve your surroundings, you improve yourself. Why the fuck do you think Jordan Peterson said clean your room?
Mm-hmm.
Like the most basic and pragmatic of wisdom is often the first to go out the window when emotions get involved. And when we are emotionally invested in something, we overlook as many red flags as we can. I think the easiest example of this is when people are in relationships that don't benefit them, but they stick around like a jaded cop, sitting it out, hoping to get his pension in time. Nope. So, when you're emotionally invested in something, whether it's a person or an ideology, you ignore every red flag. Um, I just hope that people listening understand that, like, shit's fucked. Yes, but it's not shit's fucked period. It's shit's fucked, comma. Shit's fucked, semicolon. Because there are things within your grasp and your reach that you can do. Um, I should like to point out though that, like, for all of my discussion and criticism of culture war, I think it's sad that The Right is a terminally online book club uh, that is pulled at the seams by a limited hangout. And right now, like all those JD Vance memes, it's great because it takes away attention from Peter Thiel being JD Vance's start. It takes attention away from JD Vance appearing whole cloth out of nowhere, kind of like Barack Obama, and that he graduated from law school. Kind of like Barack Obama, and he had no accomplishments to his name, and then he wrote his autobiography, and it was glowing. It was given a glowing review by the New York Times. Kind of like Barack Obama, and yeah, he got his start by a really weird figure that is like shady at best and question raising at first, kind of like Obama. And it keeps going, it keeps going. I don't know how many fucking examples I can possibly give on the matter, but let's give a few more if you don't mind. Let's see. And then he pursues the vice presidency during his first term in the Senate, kind of like Obama. Divorced parents raised by maternal grandparents and a single mother changes name as new stepfather enters the home, kind of like Obama. Like, how do we I don't oh, Obama backed by defense contractor Lester Brown, while JD Vance was backed by defense contractor Peter Thiel, who was responsible for Palantir that MI6, Mossad, and the CIA use. Yep. No, but lab and funny memes, right? Yeah, JD Vance. Yeah, sure. So yeah, Like just yeah, don't get to know your neighbors. Post Le Ebon Fanny JD Vance meme. That'll fight the regime most surely. Haha, yes. But really about this JD Vance bullshit, it's really important to understand that realistically the only way to change public opinion on JD Vance is to connect him to Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, and Palantir Technology. They all worked together in tech startups in various roles. Alex Karp, listen, I don't give a fuck about the dissident right, but Alex Karp said, "Watch me crush the dissident right in Europe," and he did. From the comfort of his desktop. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk founded PayPal. Peter Thiel and Karp are Palantir Tech, which is integrated with most intelligence agencies. Elon Musk's businesses are all government funded in some way. JD Vance got his start in politics through Thiel. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Like, just we're currently one dead president away from a new president who is part of a group of tech guys that are all intimately involved with the CIA, NSA, Mossad, MI5, MI6, all of it. And that should scare the crap out of some people. Remember when Donald Trump picked JD Vance and everyone went, "Why?" when he had some really good options? Now you know why. Don't think for a second his Indian wife isn't not part of their H1B Infinity Jeets plan for cheap tech labor either. Que lástima. Que puerco. H1B Infinity Jeets are hated more than gypsies in Europe, but Elon Musk loves, loves, loves them. Also, one of his baby mamas is half Indian and he has a quarter Indian children. So, any and all criticism of Indians not only affects whoever cuts him checks, but, he's got to come off like he's a good dad and not a deadbeat drug addict father whose kids hate him and shroon out to spite him. So, yeah, um, I, I, I will never understand any of this. However, in spite of all of this, okay, left wing culture war still manages to run for public office. Left wing culture war still manages to get like 501c, like when you're a nonprofit, you know? Like left wing culture war still manages to log off, and even though they chase red herrings, they almost accidentally end up in power. And what do we have right wing culture war for? Ah, La Abin Fanny JD Vance memes. Haha, yes. How organic. So remember, ladies and jerks, run around the block, run for office, but don't run for culture war. There are things you could, if you're religious, go volunteer at church. Right now, there are people at church or your synagogue or your mosque or the street shitting temple if you're Hindu or Sikh. Or if you're go to a Buddhist monastery, there are people volunteering their time and their energy for something they believe in, and they couldn't tell you who the regime is, but they could give you a handful of things you can do with your time and energy and power to make your surroundings and ultimately yourself a better place. And I'll round this out by saying, whenever you see a guy on Twitter talking about the regime, ask them to define the regime. They can't. The regime is a boogeyman that right wing culture war uses because it has no agreed upon definition. Never in human history has a group of peoples ever overcame an obstacle or entity or opponent that did not have an agreed upon definition. The regime is evidently so big, bad, and scary he keeps you from getting to know your neighbors or keeping your block clean. The regime. Right wing culture war is 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but there's only 1 degree, and Kevin Bacon is the regime, which, is evidently this omnipresent yet nebulous phantom that is responsible for all the evils of society. The regime functions like white supremacy or the patriarchy or, any other such nebulous, poorly defined entity that you could blame everything for. Kind of like how Karl Marx never aptly or appropriately defined capitalism, but go on Twitter long enough and it's, oh, what are they angry at? Are they angry at the regime? White people? Patriarchy? No, they're angry about capitalism. Yes, yes, of course. As long as real communism has never been tried, real capitalism has never been defined. You cannot overcome an opponent you cannot define, and the regime remains undefined. If that does not worry people, then by all means, notice and move on. Retweet Eben Funny Man getting money from the Claremont Institute so he could misrepresent others who point out the obvious. And he and only he can post Eben Funny meme from the politically incorrect board on 4chan. All right, I know I come off as mean and shitty and angry, but like, mark my words, ladies and gentlemen, every single thing I've said on this podcast is true. I never understood what Fidel Castro meant by history will absolve me until I got my first book published. And then I got mass reported on Twitter by stating the obvious about pit bulls. It's okay. Nothing stays at the bottom of the ocean forever. No witchcraft, no brujeria lasts forever. No, 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 no. And that's okay. Some people can make a lucrative living trying to keep things at the bottom of the ocean. Even the fucking Titanic resurfaced. Nothing stays at the bottom of the ocean forever. So, I'm sorry I've talked for the last 17 hours in a row, White Pill. I
No,
yield
no,
the
you're
floor.
fine. No, 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 you're fine. And I'm right there with you with the culture war stuff. It actually reminds me of a conversation that I had with a professor. It was a really weird interaction because this wasn't like in the middle of a lecture or anything. It was just like in passing. I was taking this history class, and um, we were just headed downstairs after the class had finished. I forget what we were talking about, but all of a sudden he just like brought up the most real shit ever to me, which kind of stun locked me for like a very, very long time. It really made me reevaluate, like, or at least reconsider, like, what the fuck I was doing with my life at the time. And he said something to the effect of like, he's like, so like, what program are you in? And I told him like, I'm in sociology, social sciences, and he told me, he's like, do you find it interesting that, you know, you're taking all these classes and you're learning about all these issues, but there's not a single like class or mention from these professors that uh on like the solutions to a lot of these problems that you're studying? And it really hit me there for a second because I was just thinking back. I'm like, man, like, yeah, we've learned about like all these different social movements and how societies are formed and how different groups within societies interact, but none of it was actually towards any kind of like adequate solution to all these problems that were getting pointed out. And so it's very easy, if especially if you care and you wear your heart on your sleeve, to get caught up in a lot of these problems, which I think is why a lot of the people that go into these programs, they turn Marxist, because um, they learn about just the absolute depravity and the worst parts of people and why they interact in the ways that they do. And you can't help but feel like, man, if I could just have a magic wand that could uh, solve all these issues, I would wave it in a heartbeat. And communism seems like a very, very attractive um, notion, or at least like the position to take in terms of a solution. Because like, yeah, well, why not? Why shouldn't we use the tax dollars to fund all these homeless shelters, and why not, help all these refugees, and why not do all this and do all that? But even communism aside, when the professor mentioned that like there wasn't really any kind of initiative on the part of the professors or the institution to actually come up with any solution making, it just made me like reconsider, like, so why the fuck am I taking, like, why am I in school then? Why am I doing this degree? All I'm doing is I'm just learning about all these fucking problems in society. And it was thinking like that like it ended up I ended up blackpilling myself for a very long time as a result, because I saw exactly what he was saying. In every single class, it would be, here's a racial issue that happened like decades ago and nothing came to fruition, or no solution was ever proposed. Here's another issue that was propagated and nothing came of it. And at the end of the day, it's like you said, like, there's you're not going to change the world by like going out and protesting or yelling on Twitter or being a part of these culture wars. You're much better off focusing on yourself and your block and your immediate circumstances, because at least the change there is palpable. Like, if you go around picking up garbage, you'll notice it instantly the next day. Like, oh wow, the sidewalk is much cleaner and it's just a nicer place. So because now you don't see needles and you don't see kids walking past piles of fucking discarded smokes and all that shit. It makes you feel like you're actually contributing to something that's real, versus going out into the street and protesting about conflicts that are happening thousands of kilometers and miles away. that have nothing to do with you personally, but because they have this moral um, magnet that just like grasps at people's heartstrings, and it makes it really easy to have an in and out group of like, oh my god, you don't support the war in Ukraine, you don't support X, you don't support Z, like how could you? You're so heartless. But in reality, it's like those people are also full of shit. Like all these anybody that's like really taking the culture war to heart and embodying it and trying to make it a big part of their personality or trying to define their morals through that kind of lens, it doesn't do anything. Like it realistically, it actually absolutely does nothing. It ends up just being a distraction because at the end of the day, it's like that's not going to change the circumstances of the fucking cracked out guy by the Tim Hortons as you step over him to get your fucking shitty double double that's served to you by an international student that is getting paid below minimum wage and your tax dollars are subsidizing that. Like that doesn't change that at all. You're better off just focusing on things that are actually local and trying to consider solutions that work within your immediate circle because that's really the only way that change happens. You quoted Peterson earlier with like talking about like how the simplest advice um, echoes a lot more than any kind of like massive overtures about any of these issues. It's like, yeah, you should probably clean your room because you're not if you can't clean your room, if you can't keep your your sleep schedule steady, if you can't um, avoid all these massive distractions, whether it's social media and whatnot, it's like you're not going to be able to like change the world or even like just do the smallest of things, and you're just going to end up, I don't know, just feeling sorry for yourself or just in this pit of like this nonstop despair. And then you're just going to keep floating between social issues, hoping to find a home. And if you're, I don't know, lucky or unlucky enough, you'll find a group of people that echo those sentiments. And then, now there's no reason to clean my room. Why would I bother? Why would I bother doing any of that? I have all these friends whose social affirmation depends on me agreeing with them all the time on all these issues. Like it's just,
Mm.
it ends up being this mess, and there's no one way or one like massive solution to solve it. So you just end up just yelling into the abyss the whole time. It doesn't really do anything. When in reality, like George Soros is going around and like paying pennies on the dollar to influence all these local elections, and that's where the actual moves are being made. Um, and
No,
I
you're you're spot on. And about the whole, like, because you gave a perfect example of keeping your block clean. Like, you mentioned, oh wow, kids can play without like riding their bike over crumpled packs of smokes or needles. You know what though? Like, keeping your block clean. Let's just say you're 1 square block and you keep that clean. If you're putting in the bare minimum, you're keeping your block clean. And ideally, like, other people will see what you're doing. And let me tell you something, the cops and sanitation workers will not stop you from like picking up garbage,
of course,
even though it's sanitation's job to do that. And really, sometimes all it takes is seeing someone do something very simple. I can't tell you how many people I've had hit me up that live in New York City that are like, I want to hang out. And I'm like, okay, why? And usually it's like, I'm a fan, or, I want you to sign my book, or, can I buy something can I buy something from you directly so PayPal doesn't get a cut? Sure. But some people want to hang out because they want to verify I'm the guy putting up all those flyers. And all it takes is just seeing me do it once. And half the time they're like, can I help? Like, I've lost count the number of times I've taught people how to do that. And honestly, really, like sometimes all you need is someone to just show you once. Like everything from like how to use a kettlebell, um, transcendental meditation, building a PC. You need to see someone do it first. Otherwise, you can only intuit so much, and manuals are not a substitute for real life. However, if you keep your block clean and you run into someone who's like, hey, leave the garbage in front of my block, you no longer have to interact with that person on a meaningful level. Everything you need to know about that person is revealed to them being against you keeping that part of your block clean that you share with them. Okay. However, if you start to keep your block clean, and you don't need much, just a garbage bag and and a stick with a nail in it, your fancy gloves, and ideally, someone will see you doing this, and now you have to pretend to be surprised when he asks if you need help, or he just starts picking up shit alongside with you. And you know what? Um, there is no local or municipal law that stops you from not only keeping your block clean, but let's say you keep your block clean. You know what you can do? You live in that neighborhood, don't you? You could go to the next block over and you could do it again. And you know what? People who do this feel better about themselves in the same way they feel better about themselves when doing what they're supposed to do. Like, some people lift weights so they don't scream into a pillow and lose sleep and freak out and stay stressed out all the time. I'm sure you've seen that meme, grug lift heavy rock overhead and make anger, sadness, and brain go away after a while.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, well, you could achieve that. Lifting weights is not the only way to do that. I will say though, lifting weights is important. Do you mind if I hold on. You mind if I hold on? Can I share something from my next book?
Yeah, by all means.
Um, if you don't mind, I don't want to fuck this quote up and probably ruin the momentum of it all. But hold on, don't lift for. Hold on, here we go. Men, you're listening to this. If there's anything you take away from anything I have to say, please let it be this. Okay? Don't lift for girls. Don't lift for aesthetics. Lift with the understanding that there are effects on your mind present because of the cultural socialization process and the traits that your local influence regrettably carries. And that the surest way to remove this is to commit oneself to virtuous struggle within nature, with the piety, to discipline as per all great men. Hold on, I probably fucked that up. Is it piety or piety? Piety? It's piety because you're pious, right? Piety. I
Yeah, I
fucked
think
that
it's
up, didn't I,
piety.
white pill? Piety. Okay, well, all right. I'm not. You know what? Fuck it. We'll just take it from the top. Don't lift for girls. Don't lift for aesthetics. Lift with the understanding that there are effects on your mind present because of the cultural socialization process and the traits that your local influence regrettably carries, and that the surest way to remove this is to commit oneself to virtuous struggle within nature, with the piety to discipline as per all great men. Like, that whole dynamic you described of like, why should I? But you know what? I'm not going to clean my room because I'm hanging out with people who say that's not important. And you know what? Like, one of the first things they chew your ass out in the armed service is making your bed,
Mhm.
because everything begins with making your bed. Because from your bed, your weapon has to be in order, your uniform has to be presentable, your living quarters have to be ready for inspection at any moment. All that shit begins with making your bed. Like, even the fucking army figured this out. Okay. So there are things people could do that are always within reach, but people I will never be not impressed by mankind's supernatural ability to overcomplicate things. Like, okay, like, you know what? And just one last sentiment. I promise I'm going somewhere with this because it's relative to what we're talking about. Um, if there's hey, anyone there listening, and if anything I say makes sense to you, that's great. Because guess what? Helping your community and not being okay with New World Order stuff aren't mutually exclusive. Wow, that's something take sellers never say. Take Nellers. All right, I'm slowly petering off into homeless schizo territory. But seriously, like, two things can be true at the same time, right? None of these cocksuckers ever say you could help your community and not be okay with the regime at the same time. It's either one or the other. I'll never get that. So, All right, I will yield the floor so you stop thinking I'm some sort of crazy person with a gun held against the heads of your loved one going, let me keep talking. Uh,
It's all good, man. I'm enjoying this conversation so far.
Thank you.
But no, even just speaking like from personal experience, it wasn't until I started focusing on my local surroundings that I start like just getting for one, like it clears your head in a massive way because now you're not bogged down by the constant cycle of culture wars, whether you see it on social media or otherwise. And like you said, it's not mutually exclusive. Like it's these things need to be talked about and discussed because they do actually matter, but you can't let them run your life because if you do let them run your life, then you're just gonna find yourself in a really, really dark place. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, like if you have that network of people that are also protesters and activists for hire and all that, like sure, that'll give you some kind of a safety net to remind you that, oh yeah, what I'm actually doing and going out and painting all these fucking poster boards and all that, like that actually does matter. But at the end of the day, if we're talking about um, the ratio of your action to like the impact that it actually has, like going out and protesting is a very very like low on that scale. And I'm someone that like I've studied social movement, so it was part of my degree, and I'm certainly no expert in it, but even just from what I saw, like there's a reason why social movements back then carried the weight that they do because they were dealing with all these fundamental issues that have been bubbling over for centuries. And um, it's very different to compare it's very difficult to compare um, the Me Too movement to something like second wave or first wave feminism because they're just dealing with fundamentally different facts.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's one thing to be like a hardcore like Greenpeace protester back in the 70s and 80s when it actually mattered and when you were going around to oil fields and actually sabotaging the wells or whatever. Like you can make your argument about that whether they were right or wrong, but there's very different doing that and sucking off Greta Thunberg's now adult, so I can say this, she's now an adult, uh her tits, um uh just for the sake of like being able to point your finger at some monopolist or whatever, what have you, and say, "How dare you?" Like, there's no there's no comparison to be made there because the issues of the day, they're not only are they so superficial, but there's countless examples of people and organizations and NGOs that have subverted these protests so that you can't even tell if the group that you're with actually is like 100, not 100%, but is like overwhelmingly pure in the sense that they're not infiltrated by one group or the other. So like when we see stuff like the Freedom Convoy, like that's an exception to the rule because stuff like that is actually it's organic and you can tell especially by the timing of it, like in the dead of winter in one of the worst cities to experience winter, all these people came across Canada and they had to take time off from their jobs, and it's not like they have $100,000 paychecks waiting for them at home. Like people actually had something to lose there as compared to a protest, which I mean honestly, protest season now starts in the summer because everyone's too much of a fucking pussy ass bitch to go out and when it's cold because their cause actually doesn't matter. And Jordan Peterson actually illustrated this perfectly. He mentioned that like he was still teaching and the first wave of like all these protests were happening at outside of his lectures, all he did was he moved the lectures to like 8 a.m. and all the protesters vanished because they couldn't be bothered to get up so early to fight for their cause that they so fervently believed in. So a lot of this stuff, like even just from personal experience, like I know for a fact it is not worth investing your life into, and it is not worth doing so because I during COVID that's basically what I did. I got caught up in this rage loop of looking up all these clips on like Black Lives Matter protests or COVID protests or what have you. And I just found myself just turning into it like a very, very ugly version of myself that I never want to inhabit ever again. And I'm ashamed that I spent so much time doing it. And like it's fine. I don't regret it. I made the choices that I did and I learned a lot from it. Um but it's not something that I would wish upon anyone because getting caught in that kind of feverish loop, it is it is so seductive because like I understand all the grifters on social media and whatnot to get that feedback loop of likes and whatnot just to post these quote unquote hot takes. Like it's uh it's intoxicating to have that kind of sway and to have that kind of attention put on you, especially if you're a fucking nobody that was, bullied in high school and now all of a sudden you command the voices of all these people like Ian Miles Chong. Like I don't understand how he has the following that he does. But people love him on Twitter for some reason. He's gotten like flack in the last couple of years, thankfully, but um, yeah, grifters like him will always exist and persist, and you're much better off just focusing on things that actually matter. So whether it's actually getting to know your neighbor or picking up trash, like that is going to make you feel so much better, and it cannot be compared to any amount of like protesting for Ukraine or for Gaza or for whoever the fuck. There is no there's no comparison with it, and I understand that it's very easy to think that like that's some corny shit, or oh that's it's fucking stupid, like why would I bother, there's going to be trash anyways. Well, I mean, what's all this for then? Like what's all this for? Like we're just we're gonna leave this for the caretakers, we're gonna leave this for the garbage men, we're gonna leave this for all those people, and we're not really like gonna put any initiative into what our communities look like. I don't know. I don't want to subscribe to that kind of way of living, and I understand that in the city it's very easy to. Um, but if you want to make any kind of impact, there's no better way than to actually just look locally, like whether it's volunteering at a shelter, or even just simply picking up trash. There's nothing else that can compare it to.
Oh yeah, and one thing that the left seems to understand much better than the right is that like there are already pre-existing organizations you could lend your time and energy to if you feel strong enough about it. Like it doesn't always have to be like fighting for the rights of two-spirit, non-binary, clubfoot, trans Native American Muslim refugees. Like there's like food not bombs. Like in fact, just to give an example to anyone listening, hold on. Food not bombs. Here we go. Food Not Bombs is an all volunteer movement that recovers food that would otherwise be discarded and shares free meals with the hungry. So, like, I hate to say this, but like, if you live in a city and like, if you go to the like nice part of town and you look at what like bakeries and supermarkets throw out every day, it's a fucking tragedy.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Like people who go I'm food diving and like I don't bro, it was never taken out of the package. Stop crying. Oh no, your $14 croissant sandwich that was nestled between a rotting banana and a fresh apple. I got the germs. All right, get the fuck out of here. Um, so there are already pre-existing like organizations that people can lend their time and energy to. But see, here's a blind spot, okay? And every belief, every subculture, if you subscribe or lend yourself or belong to something greater than yourself, it's going to have a blind spot. And often it takes an outsider to point the blind spot out. So, like, I'll give you an example. Um, uh the right doesn't seem to have organizations that people can lend, because obviously every left-leaning person, they might not have the same views on Gaza or trans rights or Black Lives Matter, but they're all still spending time and energy in the name of food not bombs, you know. Like it's tricky. And just to get this out of my system, uh the right wing see, left wing culture war has replaced talking about class and race. They replaced class with race because I don't know if you remember, but Occupy Wall Street started out as the 99% and the 1%.
Yep.
And then it got infiltrated and made fake and gay by the FBI and the progressive stack.
Oh
And
yeah.
then it just turned everything into bickering and arguing about privilege. So, Uh, all discussion of the economy was replaced by progressive bullshit. And then the right avoids the economy at all because they fucking hate the poor. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Appalachia or Appalachia.
Appalachia?
I don't know
Yeah,
how to say.
yeah.
Yes. So, it's the poorest region of the United States, but it does not have the highest crime rate. This raises several uncomfortable questions no one wants to tackle. And it is kind of like how China is perfectly surrounded by like wastelands and like shitty coasts. All right. Um Appalachia is avoided by the left because they're white, and they're ignored by the right because they're poor. It's a it's a perfect storm of being avoided entirely. Okay. So there are problems and issues that are sort of in the crosshairs of these blind spots. Okay. And just the homeless, and by the way, like, homelessness isn't about money. Homelessness is about like people, like, God forbid, like, yes, y- y- God forbid you lose your job and they foreclose on your home. Ideally, you have friends and family in your life who will take you in because you do the
Mhm.
same for them. Homelessness ultimately isn't about money. In fact, because Reagan closed down all the asylums, which is funny that people pay lip service to a former actor who was best known for fucking off, taking naps, eating jelly beans, looking the other way when the AIDS crisis happened and didn't acknowledge it for the first 3 years, had no qualms with crack showing up in every inner city neighborhood at the same time, as if someone wants it there. Kind of like pills and lean and fent. Wow, crazy how that happens along the same framework. So, this cocksucker closed down all the asylums, and where did the mentally ill go? The streets.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so, like, there, there's a weird. So, like I said earlier, there's a rich conservative party in Canada and a poor conservative party in Canada, and even though they see eye to eye on a lot, they'll never reconcile their differences. So, um, it's really funny how broken clock is right twice a day. So even lefty pieces of shit depicting Republicans as poor people who are I fought for the rights of the millionaires. That's kind of true, actually. Like, I I just look at everyone who voted for Trump the second time around. I voted for Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, that deadbeat African American absent drug addict father whose kids troon out to spot him. I voted for people who make more money than I do to make even more money. Like, I hate to I hate to espouse such basic bitch, um gross oversimplifications, but it's true. Like, it doesn't, like, the only way to address these issues is if you remove yourself from this greater thing, because all everyone there's an inherent part of humanity and where we are social creatures. No one man is an island. Even MC Ride, the vocalist of Death Grips, even he from time to time leaves the dark abyss that he paints in to hang out with the drummer and the sampler. Like, no, we are not meant to exist isolated, and we all inherently want to belong to something greater than ourselves. And that is what culture war best taps into.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And with having no clear cut victory or defeat conditions, anyone can play pretend. But then when you start doing things like picking up shit in your neighborhood, or, even the simple things like the things in your pantry you haven't touched and the clothing you haven't worn, don't throw it out. Someone needs that. Even if they're socks. In fact, the number one most requested item in a homeless shelter, other than like underwear, are socks. I don't there are there because it is the most unglamorous shit that are the things we must adhere to, you know? Like, every like I'll just end it with one last thing to kind of well, two things. To circle back to the whole lifting thing I talked about, you know what the hardest part of lifting weights is, White Pill?
Making sure you don't shit
Changing
yourself.
your well, that too. And if you're a power lifter, you have to be absolutely sure that when you strain, you don't blow out your rectum so where it turns into an upside down mushroom cloud, because that's a very real
Oh yeah.
possibility. So, the hardest part of lifting weights is changing your clothes and standing in front of the weights. Because once you get it in your hands and you got the first couple of reps out the way, it's all autopilot from there. Number two, much of culture war revolves around raising awareness, which is what allows lemmings to say, "But the guy I vicariously lived to, he the town crier. The Substack, it's the same as the Paul Revere warning about Britain. I changed the war. I fought the regime." All right, so raising awareness, you know what that means? Raising awareness means you are now discussing a problem bigger than yourself, and you cannot handle this problem on your own. That is why you are raising awareness. Let's be honest. Like, unless you see smoke coming out of an island and you're in a plane, would you ever realize there's someone missing and stranded at sea? No. That's all raising awareness is. Making a fire, hoping someone greater, stronger, bigger, smarter, with greater resources and a bigger, like, piggy bank than you do will notice the smoke. That's it. Or maybe anyone, for anyone to notice the smoke. That's it. That's all culture war is on the right, raising awareness. And on the left, just acting out on your worst desires with impunity. And occasionally you end up in a position of power. That's it. All the unglamorous shit is everything else. So, at the risk of not repeating myself endlessly like a fucking crazy person, is there anything else you want to discuss? Because you made some incredible points that I do not want to deter or water down my be by me going, look at these faggots, some more.
No, no. I mean, look, they this should be ridiculed because I not to kiss your ass too much, but when I saw you initially posting on Twitter about like stuff about cleaning your block, it made me kind of take a second look at my actions and what I was doing with my time and how I could easily be spending more of it doing things on the local level. And not to beat a dead horse, but like ultimately that is, I think, one of the pathways to affect greater society, and like the fact that we just feel so polarized these days with all these different opinions. It's like the only way to get these to deflate these topics or to remove these issues is to quite literally just focus on literally anything else, and putting your energy towards something that's local is uh by far not only the easiest way to do it but the most effective. um because like look, it's as you said, like raising aware like that doesn't, to me, that this idea of raising awareness, or anytime that somebody uses an argument like oh yeah, that's exactly why I'm standing on the soapbox, like it's so it's so cheap, and the barrier to entry to actually raising awareness on an issue is so small these days that any fucking monkey that can walk into, like, you don't even need your own phone. You could just walk into a fucking Apple store, sign up on a social media platform right then and there, and without even owning a device or a phone plan, you could just fire off a tweet. It just happens to hit the right person at the right time, and next thing you know, you're going viral. And you never even had to own the phone or the device or anything in the first place. Like it's such a cheap, it's too cheap to meter, as they say in the tech community, of raising awareness. That to me, like any kind of efforts placed into that kind of category, it's just, to me it's fruitless. Like it's like the same thing as like during BLM with those riots. They had that one day where they posted the black square, and then next thing you know, the supporters of the movement were like, "Oh shit, this is actually like everyone putting up this black square on their profile is actually taking away from the quote unquote real activism, because it's like it's flooding the news feed, and every time you scroll down, you just see black square, and everything was blacked out, and you're like, "Fuck, I can't even see like my regular feed anymore." Like
Oh, oh
that's
my
how
God.
stupid and retarded it is. It's like here in Canada, we have a there's a yearly campaign that happens, which is whenever I see it come up, it is just the ultimate slap in the face to anyone that's actually struggling with this issue. But they have this campaign. It's called Bell Let's Talk. And one of the major telecoms, Bell, they have this. That I think it's like I think it's a single day that they do it for. But like if you send a text and you're on the Bell network, then like a certain percentage, like a penny or whatever the fuck, gets sent to a charity to do that to raise awareness for mental health. It's like that is the fucking. I understand why they're doing it, and I'm not faulting the corporation, but anyone that actually that's outside of that and takes a look at that and thinks that that's a genuine campaign, like that is absolutely the most retarded fucking take that you can have on that issue. Because like to think that you're in any way affecting change by fucking texting people on that day and you're trying to like raise some kind of awareness on mental, like that is the most dumbest fucking shit ever. You're much better off reaching out to your high school friend that you've lost touch with and being like, "Hey man, you all right? I haven't seen you on social media in a while. Is everything good?" Like you're gonna affect, the quote unquote issue of mental health much more effectively by doing that, or just like going up to a stranger that's having a rough night or whatever the fuck. Like doing something that impacts your immediate physical environment is absolutely going to have a reverberating and a massive effect on it compared to anything else, which is why like that has to be the way back to some kind of sense of normalcy. Because we can scream about Ukraine and Palestine and all this fucking trans bullshit, like all that, till the cows come home, but that's not going to change the fact that like people are getting fucking set on fire in the subway. uh Women don't feel comfortable taking public transit, or any of these other issues that actually impact people on a day to day. Like none of that matters. Like none of this culture war shit matters. Like it doesn't matter. Like the political leaders, they always get asked whenever there's a new headline that flashes across, like, "Oh, what's your take on this? What's your take on that?" Like, who gives a shit? Who actually gives a shit? Who the fuck cares? I don't understand how anyone could form a real opinion on somebody that they want to vote for or throw their support behind if they have to have a take on the newest story that pops out. Like, what's your take on this? What's your take on abortion or vote? Like, who gives a fuck? I could never understand having that kind of like emotional investment in any of these people, whether it's the political, the cultural elite. Oh, celebrity caught cheat. Who cares? It's fucking tabloid bullshit that newspapers and all these news organizations, they're hungry for clicks because they're living in an outdated market, and they're just living on government assistance, hoping that their next click is going to lead them to the next story and give them enough money so that they can pay their people by the next week. And it's just a daily cycle of this shit coming 24/7. And then when you get to work, everyone's talking about it. Like I remember when the fucking when the Will Smith slap fucking happened, and my fucking god, that shit pissed me off. Not because it happened or anything, but because the people around me that I was working with at the time, I felt compelled to have an opinion on it just because of like how serious the issue was. Like I remember I was working at this fucking vape shop, um, and all of a sudden, like the topic the conversation comes up, and they're talking about the Will Smith slap or who was right and who was wrong and yada yada yada, and I'm just standing there being like, bro, you're a grown ass man with fucking like two kids and a divorced wife. Like, why the fuck are you giving this any mental headspace? And then also getting mad at me when I'm not giving it any consideration whatsoever. Like, I could care less. What I care about is the fact that the price of my rent has increased because the fucking housing crisis is going up. The fact that I'm paying fucking $9 for a head of lettuce. Like, I care about that. That's the shit that I care about. I could care less what the fuck like any of these people are saying or any of these causes are doing. It just it's I get it. I understand the inclination to sink your time and emotional energy into it. I understand that. But there is no amount of screaming or standing on these soapboxes that is ever going to move the needle on any of these things. Look, you care so much about Ukraine, go on the front line, go volunteer. They're taking soldiers, like they're taking people. Go fucking go for the French Legion. Okay, like by all means, they're taking volunteers all the time. Like go
I,
sign
I
up for the
would
fucking army.
I would like to point something out about Ukraine, which really weirded me out when the conflict first started. Well, I mean, it's been happening for over a decade. Um, but I remember when the most recent invasion and conflict started. First of all, like, how bad is it that like Russia has troops from North Korea showing up as backup to like Kursk? I never thought I'd witness North Koreans getting drone struck, but here we are.
Or getting
Never.
addicted to porn because they're getting exposed to the internet for the first time. You ever see that footage of them like in the bunks of like Russian soldiers? They're going around to see what the
No,
North Koreans are
no.
doing.
I
Yeah.
I'm that reminds me of like the old apocryphal tale of where like Spartans would go to Athens to compete in the Olympics and lose their mind and either run away or kill themselves because they were like, wait, you could live like this? Because their
Hmm.
life was just like merciless struggle and being automaton killing machines. So then
And
they're like,
butt
wait, you could
sex.
have fun, drink. Yeah. It's like, whoa, you could like sleep with women and drink wine and eat figs and eat sweets and eat as much meat as you want. All right, BRB, gonna go throw myself off the cliff.
Yeah.